Two, hello. Check. Check, two, hello. Two. What's up, friends? Hello. The line going down is a matter of perspective. You see recession and job loss. I see an opportunity to invest before the next boom. Be sure to subscribe for more Sigma grind set advice. You gotta buy the dip. Always buy the dip. Number one grind set stock move that I know. Buy the dip, and we're certainly in a dip right now. That means you gotta buy. That's rule number one. I'm not yet ready for cute Rob. It's too much on Wednesday. Oh, Diego, stop it. Stop it.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
But it keeps dipping.
Thank you, Dakadoon, for the 22 months of Tier 1. Thank you, Dakadoon, for all the support. I know it's still dipping. Hodl. Apes together strong. Chin chin, everybody. Ugh. That hits the spot. Pour another slurp juice for the stock market. We're going to see. I mean, I saw a few stories.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Oh, goodness, Brian. Brian, thank you. Thank you for the gifted sub, Brian. I'll make that alert a little smaller. Seems very large. Thank you for the gifted sub, Brian. Sorry I'm late. It's actually me that's late. It's me that's late. My schedule's all like thrown off. I was supposed to talk to the deprogram pod today. I like kind of forgot to confirm ahead of time, and my schedule, like I was out of town last week. My schedule is still all out of whack because my kid is not in school. He went back to school one day, and then he's been sick the other 2 days. He's sick today still. You can count on me.
You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
So my schedule
you buy the
is
dip.
all...
I'll bring the chips.
My schedule is all out of whack. So I forgot to check in with them, but I think better for everybody, reschedule till next week when I'm not kind of all running around, freaking out, running around like a headless chicken or whatever. They'll be coming on next week, okay? And that's why I'm a little late. I was watching my kid this morning. My partner took some time off work. Now she's with them. It's always very difficult to coordinate the schedules and everything when he's not in school. That really complicates everything. So next week, next Wednesday, I think. Maybe I shouldn't set this in stone, but aiming for next Wednesday. Yes. Heard from you, Gopnik, today. Next Wednesday. Deprogram pod on TRRS, okay? And I will still attempt to reach out to Brian Becker. I'm going to still try and do that. I've texted him. I don't know if Brian is just not familiar with text. I don't know if he's a texter. I'll try to see if I can arrange something with that. Either way, though, like he'll be... I'll work on him coming on in the future as well. I just got off the phone with Haki. You're scheduled for Gulag this weekend. Oh my. And I deserve it. And I absolutely deserve it. I had it coming. And I think when you get sent to the Gulag, that should be your attitude. What did I do to deserve this? And more importantly, what do I need to do to learn from this? How can I turn this into making myself a better improvement? Self-criticism. self-analysis. You know? How do I make sure that I can be a productive member of the content creation community? Exactly, it's a moment for self-reflection and growth, not self-pity. That's the Sigma grind set attitude, you know? It's your opportunity to be better, right? It's you're learning a valuable lesson. What are you going to do with that? Lesson 1, don't have sick kids. Exactly, that's my number one takeaway. That is my number one takeaway. That will be good stuff, though, next week. Absolutely. Sigma grind the biosphere to dust. That's what I've been saying. Plenty of stuff to take a look at today, though. I gotta put my music on repeat here for a little while. So how are we all doing? Oh, and I didn't say thank you to GMO Radio for the 18 months tier 2. Thank you, GMO Radio, for that. Thank you. So is the line still going down? That's the question. That's the question we're going to be exploring today. Is the line still going down? It really, like, the as we looked at the coverage from this on, you know, Monday, talking about the Silicon Valley Bank imploding. And then, of course, you have the Fed out there and you have the Biden administration out there saying, like, don't worry. Remember, everything will be fine. Nothing to see here. I tied that together with that classic scene from the film Naked Gun. You all remember. And it did kind of seem like their aggressive intervention in that had seemed to slow down or stop whatever bleeding. And we were wondering if that's going to be an isolated incident or some signs of something bigger. And it doesn't really seem like it seems like there's still more fallout, or there's still more dominoes falling here. I don't know. I've been swimming in sewage. I love it. Yeah. We're seeing more chaos on this. The Michael Hudson video on the bank failure is really good. Okay, that sounds like good content to look at today. And then what do we have today happening? We've got Credit Suisse. Is that it? Is that collapsing? Let me check out the Finance Sickos channel. Here's the Michael Hudson video. That's good. With our friend Ben Norden. I should name him and like Rania and VJ official co-hosts of this show, considering they're always popping up on here. I basically lean on them to do their jobs more than me, and then I can just kind of like coast all the way to the bank. German stock market down 3%, another Euro country stock market down 4%, I think. I'm open to these Finance Sicko channels. Okay, we got some stuff open. Sell! Everyone sell! I don't have anything to sell. I have nothing to sell at all. Wonder if I can get China State affiliate media if I just RT the hell out of them. That's the dream, right? I would love to have one, like an official foreign agent designation. One of the ultimate badge of honors, I think. Badges of honor. Take all your money out of the bank account is the only way we can save the economy. What you want to do is you want to get some kind of a box. Take out all the money. Put it in the box. Go out and dig a hole somewhere. Put the box in the hole. Make sure you have some kind of a map. Make a little notation on the map where your money box is buried. This could be at a public park, could be in a backyard. You could put it up on like a really high like roof, like an awning or like a gutter or whatever. A leaf gutter in your home. Put it in the top of the toilet, maybe. Make sure you have some kind of indication of where that is. And what you want to do as well is you want to have some kind of a cipher or a leaf gutter. You want to make sure you have some kind of a cipher or secret code. So, invent a step 1. Cut a hole in the box. Classic. Make sure you want to have some kind of a cipher, a secret code. Write that down. Write it down like a secret coded message to yourself, which is a kind of a key that lets you know how to read the map that you've created to your top secret stash. I would get the code tattooed on your body. You know? Just to make it extra cool. And then you're set. You have a tattoo with a secret map, which you need a special cipher to look at. Unlock that with the secret code. When you need your money, you just head down to wherever it's buried or stored or stashed, using the secret map that you've unlocked. Dig it up. Take a few bucks, put the rest back. Maybe put it somewhere else after that point because that's been compromised, and then repeat the whole process over again. That's my official financial advice. I'll just remember where it is. That so sounds like something that I would do. I don't need a cipher. Skip that step. I'll just remember. Looking around like when you're losing your car keys, like... Financial advice, slub to rib. Exactly. I think that's great financial advice for anybody that's worrying right now. As I've said many times, friend coin is stable. Okay, that's a stable investment. Make a treasure basement with an ancient dragon to guard it. Okay, now you're just being silly. Now you're just being silly. I had a mask off moment with my libertarian MAGA dad and talked about how shitty our infrastructure. All he did was make excuses for it, like he was talking to a cult member. It's weird how the private sector just refuses to step in there and build infrastructure. It's just a mystery. That's got to be very frustrating. I'm trying to get family members on board with the idea of, like, China should be coming into our country and building stuff for us in exchange for, access to resources or whatever it is they make a deal on. It's actually interesting because I think most people genuinely do understand that like it's politically not possible for us to build infrastructure. Like I do think even people that are on board the sort of like Cold War, Red Scare, China bad rhetoric. A lot of people do implicitly understand that like we're not, if we want more bridges or highways, or not even highways, but obviously, but rail, or in housing, more housing. People understand that we don't have the political will to do these kinds of projects anymore. Hope China doesn't come to rural America and build high-speed railroads that connect to major cities. It would be truly awful. Yeah. It'd be truly awful as well in Canada. If a railway was constructed that just serviced, in this one line, serviced like 45% of the population of this country. There's some infrastructure done by private companies, which is why now, if you want to travel north out of Charlotte to the next 10 exits and not wait for an hour in traffic, it'll cost you $15 on the tollway. There we go. Beautiful. Beautiful. Even he kind of acknowledged he had no power to change it, even though he's middle class and donates all this money to politicians. I mean, the China stuff is genuinely very interesting as well, because like you see people, whether your parents are like NPR liberals or Fox News dads or whatever along that spectrum, or just to completely brainwashed Facebook people or TikTok or what have you. They're like the stories about China are so one-sided and so like where it goes from this spectrum of China is evil and bad and like eating babies and coming to like to put fentanyl in your neighborhood to like a slightly less insane version of that. Those are the two political, that's the ideological spectrum when it comes to China that people are being exposed to in basically any media that they watch. Like, you know what I mean? Either they're like evil, the next Nazi Germany, and need to be destroyed and confronted right away, or they're evil and nefarious and we need to try and avoid conflict, but like we still need to be very leery about every single thing that they do. That's basically the spectrum. And like when you go to people that are kind of plugged into that media ecosystem, which is like most people, like that's how the vast majority of our media, they're ideologically in tune on this. And you go to them and to just go land completely outside that and be like, actually, what do you I think China is good and that we should work with them rather than always be fighting one another. It's funny how that like breaks people's brains because it's just a viewpoint that they're not used to hearing. You know what I mean? No matter what media they consume, whether it's social media or liberal media or conservative media, that's not a viewpoint that they're exposed to. You know? They're literally 1984, which I've not read, but I heard was bad. Well, that's what I mean. You have like the New York Times China bad spectrum, or you have the like the femdom machine milking factory. That's the spectrum, you know? But people are so not used to hearing that viewpoint. I actually don't think that they're bad. And I think we should avoid conflict with them, and we should like work with them. Maybe even learn from them. Maybe even learn from some of the incredible things that they've accomplished. And people just go, what? It totally messes people up. But it's also when you have this conversation with people, you realize that it's a very reasonable viewpoint. I love that for years my weird dad has been saying the exact same thing about China, that we should all be working with them for a better world. My weird dad has been saying that too, Squatch. God bless the weird dads of the world who managed to come to the correct dialectical framework without all the theory and all the studying. What? Excuse me. I'm one of those weird dads myself now, you know? That's the beauty of life. Now my weird dad is a weird grandpa, and I'm the weird dad. Can you believe that? Weird dads rising. No, but you know what I mean, though? It is really interesting that it's just that for a lot of people, I would say the vast majority of people that are plugged into like any media, any mainstream media whatsoever, and even like wacko extremist social media, that's just a viewpoint that they don't have, that they're not exposed to, you know? And it's very reasonable. It's very easy, I think, to have that discussion with people. I mean, there are people that are just now so tuned into like the human rights thing that it's just like, that's automatic disqualifier. You know? Automatic disqualifier. Which is why those human rights stories are so effective. Clueless wore my Rousseau Institute sweatshirt today to her parents and got compliments. That's a nice one. I like that that sweatshirt. What is that, a crew neck? It looks good on both of you, frankly. I was kicked out of the university's socialist gathering for defending China. I was told in multiple different ways that they betrayed the socialist movement with their authoritative ways. This socialist gathering. Oh my, Dimitri. Oh my goodness. This is
some guy, Rob Russo, some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Zach, thank you for the raid. Zach, thank you. Thank you very much for the raid. How was the stream today, Zach? Get in here, raiders. I'm Rob. Hello. Come on in. Bring it in. You know, maybe it's foolish, but I think that's the exact reason, though, that I feel it's as important as something can be here on Twitch to carve out a space where it's okay to talk about this and to hold this position. Because even people that are like, oh, I'm on the left, and then they hang out in these like movements or groups that end up having these kind of tendencies. And then if they have questions about China, they think that we can and should be looking at the things they've accomplished. And then the people that are close to them, that they're trusting on like providing them with this sort of political education, why go, no, don't do that. And they go, okay, fine. You know, I think it's important that we can have a space where it's like, that's the viewpoint. That's the editorial line. It's made me more comfortable in talking about it. I hope it's made people in this community more comfortable talking about it at your homes or workplaces or organizing spaces or whatever, you know? It's been really helpful to me. When I started doing this like 2-3 years ago, I was really uncomfortable saying positive things about China. It's been this process of like talking about it and learning about this stuff collectively, like with all of you each and every week, that I've become more and more comfortable articulating this position. You know, it's been very valuable in this climate, I think. The deprogram boys are coming on the stream. And that is next week. Next week at this time.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Brackish Boy. Brand new community member, Brackish Boy. Thank you for the tier 1 sub, Brackish Boy. I appreciate that. Only 23 months away. Brackish Boy only started the long journey. Only 23 months away from the elite exclusive TRRS golden 2-year sub badge. I do educational far left political streams 7 hours every day, but yeah, everyone seems to be getting lined down at the moment this month. Is that what the title's about? Well, we're just talking about like the bank run on Silicon Valley, and I've been talking a lot this week about the kind of paranoia that we all have because we're living in this kind of zombie economic system, and we're all waiting for it to collapse at any moment, and we keep like every single sign that it's about to happen, we're all like on like this knife edge. Yeah. I'm honestly surprised we haven't had more weird YouTube videos pop up like that weirdo who criticized you about Tibet for 30 minutes and realized he was an idiot but had to wrap it up. I never watched that whole thing. I think I wasn't happy with how I looked physically in that video, and then I didn't want to engage with it for that reason. But wasn't this person, like, after complaining nonstop about our Tibet takes, was like, I've never actually looked into the political system in Tibet prior to the formation of the PRC? Wasn't it something like that? Like, it after making this epic video about the community? It's a necromorphic economy. I mean, it is funny in the way that saying, like, I think China is actually good can just shut down people's brains. Even talking about those places like Tibet and people that they know that, you know, Tibet is under this kind of like brutal occupation, authoritarian occupation, and we need to restore the previous system. And you can just ask, like, do you know anything at all about the previous system prior to the formation of the PRC and the Chinese government and the CPC taking over? And they'll be like, actually no. And you can probably repeat that about every single one of these kind of targets of countries that are kind of in this process of building socialism but that are under imperialist threat, like North Korea. I'm a leftist, I'm a socialist, I'm a communist, but of course I would never support North Korea. That's so outrageous. They're not real socialists or whatever. You know anything whatsoever about the Korean War and the foundation of the DPRK? No, I don't. No, I do not. It's funny how many people just like are operating under that this kind of complete ignorance of any of this kind of historical context. I was watching an IRL streamer in Hong Kong the other day, and the sheer amount of State Department anti-China Amera brain rot shit being said in that chat was mind-boggling. I mean, again, that's why I felt it's somewhat important to carve out this space where this is okay, because you see every online space is dominated by this. Like, if you look at anything, anytime China ever comes up on Reddit, for example, and it's really impossible to have any kind of a serious discussion about it. Yeah, that argument is very annoying about, oh, yeah, I'm sure you think the Democratic People's Republic of Korea is democratic. And I say, yes, I do. I just watched a little film called Loyal Citizens of Pyongyang. And I actually do think that, yes. I guess we should get into this, like, financial stuff. I feel a little slow on the uptake today. Maybe I'm getting sick too. We can watch, though. Your grandpa deserved it. We can take a look at some of these tweets. We can look at this this video with Michael Hudson. Let's do this. Preparing my window here. So as always, when we talk about this financial stuff, though, I'm aware that I have a sort of tendency to, anytime there's any sign at all of trouble, to immediately like start wondering, is our entire financial system going to collapse? Which, I don't know, maybe that's not the most helpful way of looking at things. Like I said, I think we're just all so stressed out. I certainly am anyways, from living on this knife edge and just feeling like we live in this decaying economic system that's just ready to collapse at any moment. It's always my first takeaway. The moment that we start to see trouble, is it happening? Like, we're all just waiting for this moment. So I think it's impossible not to immediately jump to that conclusion. I certainly have trouble with that anyways. This is it. Knowing that it must and will someday probably gives me the anticipation. I mean, that's it, right? It's like, not that we would celebrate that. Even though I talked about the ways we do kind of have this like sick excitement and this sort of death drive aspect, like we have with human beings watching any disaster unfold. You can't really help that. I do feel that, like, yeah, even though we know that it's going to be a disaster, like I talk about World War III a lot as well. I think World War III is going to be a fucking disaster as well. It'll be an all-time historic atrocity. And certainly if World War III does happen, tens of millions of people will die, as they did in the previous world wars. It's going to be terrifying. Many of us probably won't live to see the end of it. It's awful. I guess, just like I've been saying, if you just have this feeling that the other shoe is going to drop eventually, sometimes you just want it to fucking happen. Rip the Band-Aid off. Just like, if this shit is going to happen, like, this feeling of waiting for whatever it is to happen is just like psychologically stressful. At least I wouldn't have to worry about rent. I'm sure we still will. I'm sure even when World War III is going on. Like, finally, at least I don't have to go to my job. They're going to be like, oh, you still have to go. You do still have to go. Don't get me wrong. So we've got news. I don't know how accurate Spectator Index is. Stock markets in Germany and France fall by over 3%. Italy and Spain fall by 4%. 2-year Treasury. Your standard issue 40-plus basis point drop in the 2-year yield, blowing through Monday's lows. Investors are freaking out right now. U.S. Treasury yields plummet to an insane 80 BP. I don't know what any of these terms mean, though. An insane 80 BPS. Was it a song? Is that the beats per second? I don't know. Biggest drop in yield since 1987 flash crash, bigger than what happened after 9/11 and Lehman Brothers. Is a market collapse coming? Nick Gerli. The Treasury market. Not looking good on Credit Suisse. This is kind of the question, though. We got panic, meltdowns, people crying. Like I was saying on Monday, is this the start of something bigger? Is it an isolated incident? The Fed and the United States government took decisive action to rescue the Silicon Valley Bank, which we talked about, and did that. It looked like when the markets opened, it wasn't as big of a panic as people thought there was going to be. We said, okay, maybe we're just kind of freaking out over nothing here. But that's the kind of the question we had, like, right? Is this the sign of something? Is this a first domino that's falling? Is there going to be more chaos? Is it the sign that it is happening indeed? You know, this is the question. So when like, who knows whether that's true? Maybe they still will be able to kick the can down the road like we've been talking about. But this is the kind of question we have: is whether this weekend and Silicon Valley Bank and the ensuing chaos from that, is it the sign of more fluctuations and more chaos coming? That's kind of the question. I don't really know. I don't really know what the answer is. One hour ago.
Right, well, shares of Credit Suisse, along with European bank stocks, falling sharply this morning as jitters from the SVB collapse spread. Yahoo Finance's Inez Ferrer is here at the Wi-Fi Interactive with a breakdown for us. Hey, Inez.
Hey, Rochelle, and I just want to show you what's happening with the sectors on the S&P 500 because, as you mentioned, financials really taking a hit today. And let's take a look at our banks chart so you can see a lot of these stocks that are underwater. You've got JP Morgan Chase, Morgan Stanley that's underwater. But we want to point out Credit Suisse, as you have been mentioning, down 18% right now. And over the last 8 sessions, it has been down. I'm going to pull up a 7-day chart here. Now, investors had been concerned about Credit Suisse for some time. Also, they saw problems when it comes to the credit default swap. Those prices were spiking higher. So you heard rumblings over the last couple of days that the bank may be in trouble because that is a type of insurance on default. So when those prices go up, you know that there's trouble. So we saw today also the stock going lower. This is also after the Saudi National Bank said that it won't give the bank any more assistance. This is its top shareholder, by the way, saying no more funds for you. So this is creating problems with the entire banking sector right now. We're seeing pressure on banks overall. I also want to point out what's happening with the regional banks because we saw what happened with SVB, the collapse of SVB, and we saw the impact that it had on the regional banks over the last couple of sessions. And I want to point out one in particular, which is First Republic. We've been watching this bank like a hawk over the last several sessions. On Monday, the stock was down a record 62%. Then yesterday, it rebounded more than 30%. It closed higher, and now it's down. This is after S&P downgraded the bank, its credit rating on the bank. So you're seeing that's part of the reason why you're seeing pressure on First Republic. So look, very different situations when you talk about Credit Suisse, when you talk about SVB, very different banks. Credit Suisse much larger than SVB, different dynamics, different situations, different set of issues. But nonetheless, this is creating concern within the banking industry.
It's interesting how like a lot of the chaos seems to be coming from vibes alone, right? People just like are getting spooked. I like all these investors, they've been waiting, like they all I think are just as aware of how fucking unstable this all is as well, and how much of it just seems to be coming from people getting spooked and being like having that same reaction that we're having. Is it happening? And it's having all these like consequences and bleed overs into other financial sectors and institutions that aren't even necessarily totally linked with one another. They're all linked by being part of the same big house of cards, but you've got one card over here and you've got one card over here. And it's like the whole thing's wobbling, and there's certain things that are falling out of place. Bank runs are essentially just bad vibes. That's right. Then the biggest vibe is Tesla stock. It's a vibes based economy. It's a very real and trustworthy financial system.
Certainly terrible timing, to say the least. We know that billionaire Ray Dalio, though, has some thoughts on what the collapse of SVB means for the world financial system. What did he say?
Yeah, that's right. He basically said that the SVB
Yeah, I'll put on the
collapse
financial-
shows that the
I'll
cracks
put on
are
the,
widening in
Michael
the
Hudson video and
global
just
finance
setting the table a little
industry
bit
as a
with this
whole. He also said that
mainstream financial
the
coverage.
collapse of the bank will be followed by more problems before the contraction phase of the cycle runs its course. He wrote this in an open letter. Also, a similar tone was struck by BlackRock's CEO Larry Fink, basically saying that some banks may have to pull back lending in order to shore up their balance sheets. Also saying that you're going to see stricter capital standards following SVB's collapse as well, Rochelle.
We have a situation underway here where stocks are plummeting. Futures indicating a decline of 500 points at the opening of trading
4
this
hours
morning.
ago.
The Dow
Fox
Jones Industrial
Business.
Average right now down 563. The Nasdaq is down 190, and the S&P lower by 72. European markets this morning are lower.
So these were all the indicators that they were looking at on Monday as being, oh, it's actually not that bad is what's going on. And now it seems like there is maybe a little premature some of the like everything's going to be fine talk on Monday from some of these folks. Was slightly premature.
And the S&P lower by 72. European markets this morning are lower, led by a sell-off in Credit Suisse. Worries about Credit Suisse has all the major banks in Europe down. The FT 100 is down 205. The CAC 40 is down 251. And the DAX index lower by 409, as you can see there. Joining me right now is Piper Sandler's chief investment strategist, Michael Kantrowitz. Michael, good to see you. Your thoughts on what's playing out this morning?
Lots going on, and there's a lot of uncertainty that continues to build, not only in the U.S. banking system, now in the European banking system.
I'm in danger.
I think the bigger picture here is that we've been in a backdrop, and we will continue to be in a backdrop for some time
Credit
as
Suisse?
the
I
lagged
prefer
effects
Credit
of all
Cheddar.
of these
Ooh.
policy tightenings from central banks, from commercial banks, and from
I see.
inflation create the conditions for problems to happen. And so I think, this is one of several problems that we're going to be seeing down the road. Most of these are due to higher interest rates. Historically, the big problems arise when job losses occur, which unfortunately is a typical byproduct of the lagged impact of higher rates. So, our message to investors has been for quite some time now to be quite defensive and conservative. And that we still believe we're in a bear market, and investors shouldn't get too complacent on this idea that the economy is anywhere near recovering on a global basis.
So do you expect more bank failures?
In the U.S., I think the FDIC has explicitly backstopped the two specific banks that have failed. I think that's an implicit backstop for other banks. I'm not a bank analyst. I don't think that the government is going to allow a systemic problem to unfold like 2008. The problems in the banking system today are different than 2008 for sure. And it's a combination of higher rates and the long-held assumption that rates
A bear
are going
market
to be
is
zero for a
opposite of
long
the
period of
one
time.
where it's good.
One interesting stat
In my
is that
understanding.
the last time we really saw a broad-based tightening cycle like this was a record 16 years ago. When you go throughout history, 16 years is the longest time in history between the types of tightening cycles we see today in commercial and central
just
bank
the market
tightening.
doing what it's supposed to
We haven't seen
do.
that since 2007.
Adam.
Michael, Adam Johnson
That's called
here.
a stable economic
and by the
system,
way, you
sir.
have been consistent in
It does this every couple
your
of
calls
years,
for
and it's
caution,
fine. You
and
just
you've
gotta
been
kick the
right.
tires.
So I commend you for that. My question is, you talk about that 16-year
It's like the TV,
tightening
the
cycle,
scrambled TV,
but
just
is
give
it
it a little
possible
slap.
that we're actually about to see the
Slap
end
the
of
top
this
a couple
tightening
times, and then
cycle because
goes back to
falling
normal.
asset prices, falling bank stocks, and falling markets will ultimately force the Fed's hand and force them to stop raising rates?
Yeah, so just to clarify, the 16 years is the last time we saw a tightening cycle like this, which is a historic period of time, which means that, I guess unless you're 35 years old or older, you
Blow into
haven't
the
been
cartridge.
employed and seen something like this. And even for those of us that are above the age of 35, our muscle memory has weakened to recency bias of soft landings. And so, if things continue to escalate, that's going to be a pressure for the Fed. The one thing we have to keep in mind, everyone's bringing up, well, look, the Fed cut when LTCM imploded in 1998. CPI was 1.68 when that happened. So there was nothing holding back the Fed from jumping in and cutting rates aggressively in the middle of 1998. Today, obviously, a very different story. So the Fed remains between a rock and a hard place. We saw CPI yesterday. Core services, ex-shelter and healthcare was quite hot. But I think the ultimate answer to your question, Adam, is that even if the Fed were to stop today, even if the Fed were to cut today, there's a lagged effect that has to play out. And then there's banks' lending standards, which is the
He doesn't know more than we do.
We have a situation.
All right, we'll share.
Where's the guy who honks the money horn? Jim Cramer. He was telling people like a few months ago that Silicon Valley Bank was very stable. I believe what Jim Cramer just said is that there's going to be a nice soft landing from all this. So, whatever that means. Let's look at what else we got here. We're going to hear from friend of the stream.
Our next guest says the recent bank failures are the direct result of Washington leaders weakening financial rules, and is also calling for the DOJ and the SEC to probe potential criminal violations. Joining us now exclusively from Capitol Hill is Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren. Senator Warren, welcome back. Good to see you.
Queen.
Thank you. Good to see you, too.
Just as far as the immediate potential legislation here, which is reinstating the rollbacks from 2018 on small and mid-sized banks, is that something realistic? Even the Democrats that voted for that are coming out and backing up their decision.
Look, what matters is what we learn right at this moment. And what we know is that 5 years and 1 day ago, we rolled back regulations. Donald Trump, the Republicans, support from some of the Democrats, said we're going to make regulation over these banks that are bigger than $50 billion. We're going to make that regulation lighter. There's going to just be, less stress testing. The stress tests will be easier liquidity requirements, and on throughout the system. And the consequence of that is that the bank executives did, some of them, exactly what you would expect. And that is they boosted their profits by loading up on risk. And they boosted their salaries. They boosted their bonuses, all by taking on more risk. And it worked great right up until the banks exploded. So what we need to do right now here in Congress is to say we now have evidence of what happens when you ease up on the regulation for banks of that size. We just need to put those tougher constraints back in place.
And I'm sure the Republicans are going to get right on that. Yeah, it really would have been a good idea, It's unfortunate that no one in Washington was saying this sometime over the last 2 years to do that if it was so important. When Democrats had the Senate and the House and the presidency, that would have been the better time to do that than after the midterms when they don't have the Senate anymore. To me, and again, I'm not a political expert, I'm not a political advisor, the time to do that would have been previously. And it seems less likely now that anyone's going to do that. Okay, we'll get to the clip of Michael Hudson to get some answers here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ben Norton. I have the pleasure of being joined by someone who I think is one
I
of
feel
the
bad
most
almost that
important
Ben
economists
Norton is
in the world, Michael
doing my job
Hudson.
for me.
And I should say that we should wish Professor Hudson a happy birthday. Today is March 14th. It's his birthday, and he turns 84 today. How do you feel, Michael?
Just like I feel every other day. I usually feel energetic on my birthday because I'm always working on a new chapter, and I tend to write a lot around this period each year.
And Michael is extremely prolific. He has so many books, and today we're going to be talking about a lot of topics that he addressed in one of his classic books, which is Killing the Host, and talking about how the financial sector is parasitic for the real economy. And today we're going to be talking about the banking crisis that we see unfolding in the United States. This March, 3 banks have collapsed in the span of 1 week. It started at first with a California-based cryptocurrency-focused bank, Silvergate, which collapsed on March 8th. And then 2 days later, the Silicon Valley Bank went down as well. It went down in the largest ever bank run. And that was the second biggest ever to fail in U.S. history. And it was also the largest bank to crash.
Like, doesn't that bank run, and the fact that that bank run, which is like really the thing that caused that Silicon Valley Bank crash, doesn't it give you a sense of like where these people's heads are at, though? It's like they're so fucking anxious that they're all waiting for the system to collapse too, right? They all know how close to fucking collapse this is at any given moment. I really feel like the fact that these vibes can lead to this massive runoff is just sort of an indication of where are the people that think about this stuff all the time and have their whole lives invested in it, the confidence level that they have in this system continuing to function, which doesn't seem to be very high, considering the ways that these bad vibes and panics are leading to these this chaos. They don't seem to have a very high level of confidence in this system, which they love to tell us is so fucking great and stable and that we all need to believe in. They don't even believe in it.
Since 2008, Silicon Valley Bank had $209 billion in assets, compared to the largest ever bank failure, which was Washington Mutual, which had $307 billion in assets, and that was in 2008. So Professor Hudson has been writing about this. He already has 2 articles that he published, and I have them over at geopoliticaleconomy.com. I'll link to them in the description below. The first is why the U.S. banking system is breaking up. So, Michael, let's just start with your basic argument of why you think these banks have been crashing. First Silvergate, then Silicon Valley Bank, and why you think they're crashing and what the response of the Federal Reserve has been.
Well, in order to understand why they're crashing, you have to compare it to what happened in 2008 and 2009. This crash is much more serious. In 2008 and 2000...
Much more serious, okay. Because I had a lot of people kind of like lecturing, saying, no, everyone calm down. Stop being a doomer. Stop, immediately saying that the whole system is going to collapse, just because I bet you feel pretty silly now. and Michael Hudson saying like, oh no, yeah, it's going to be worse. It's more serious. That's good. Very good stuff.
2009, Washington Mutual collapsed because it was a crooked bank. It was writing fraudulent mortgages, junk loan mortgages. It should have been allowed to go under because of the fraud. And the basic subprime fraud and collapse was widespread fraud throughout the whole financial system. Citibank was one of the worst offenders, Countrywide, Bank of America. These were individual banks that could have been allowed to go under, and the mortgages could have done what President Obama had promised to do. The mortgages could have been written down to the realistic market values that would have cost about as much to service as paying your monthly rent, and you just would have got the crooks out of the system. My colleague Bill Black at the University of Missouri at Kansas City described all this, and the best way to rob a bank is to own one. So the problem then in under the Obama administration was he said he made an about face and reversed everything that he had promised his voters. He had promised to write down the loans to keep the subprime mortgage people in their houses, but to write down the loans to the fair value and undo the fraud. What happened instead was as soon as he took office, he invited the bankers to the White House and said, I'm the only guy standing between you and the mob with the pitchforks. The mob with the pitchforks, he meant mainly black and Hispanic buyers, mortgagees, who were the main victims of the subprime fraud. And he bailed out the banks and directed the Fed to undertake 15 years of quantitative easing. And what that was the Fed said, well, the mortgages are worth less than the value of the property doesn't suffice to cover all of the bank deposits because the banks have made bad mortgages. How do we save the banks that have misrepresented the value of what they have? We're going to slash interest rates to zero. We're going to spur the largest asset price inflation in history. We're going to put $9 trillion into supporting bank credit and flooding the market with credit so that instead of real estate prices going back to an affordable level, we can make them even more unaffordable. And that will make the banks much richer. It'll make the 1% in the financial sector much richer. It'll make the landlords much richer. We're going to do that. And so they spurred by lowering the interest rates, they created the biggest bond market boom in American history, from high interest rates in 2008 all the way down to almost zero. So the result, of course, was an inflation in stock prices, an inflation of bond prices, and the result was widening inequality for Americans because you had most stocks and bonds are owned by the wealthiest 10%, not by the bottom 90%. So if you were one of the 10% of the population that owned stocks and bonds, your wealth was going way up. If you were part of the 90%, your wages were not going up. And in fact, your living standards were being squeezed, not only by the inflation, but by the fact that more and more of your income had to go to paying rent and interest to the fire sector. Well, finally, a year ago, the Federal Reserve said, well, there's a problem. Now that we have the COVID over, wages are beginning to rise. We've got to have 2 million Americans thrown out of work in order to lower wages so that the companies can make larger profits to pay higher stock prices. Because if we don't cause unemployment, if we don't lower the wage levels for America, then profit levels will go down and stock prices will go back down. And our job at the Fed is to increase stock prices, increase bond prices, and increase real estate prices. So finally, they began to
that sounds sustainable.
Raise wage rates to, as they put it, curb inflation. When they said inflation, what they mean is rising wages. And even though wages have gone up, they have not gone up as much as the consumer prices have gone up. And the consumer prices have gone up not because of wage pressures, but for two reasons. One, the sanctions against Russia have sharply increased the price of energy because Russian oil can't be sold to the West anymore, and Russian agriculture can't be sold to the West anymore. And also, there's been the Democratic Party has followed the Republican Party in deregulating monopolies. Every monopolized sector of the economy has been raising its prices without its costs going up at all. And they've raised the prices because they say, well, we're raising them because we expect inflation to go up. Well, that's a euphemism for saying we're raising them because we can, and we can make more money by raising them. So the prices have gone up, but the Fed is using this as an excuse to try to create unemployment. Well, what has happened is that by solving the problem of wages rising, they've also created a problem that's spilled over into the financial sector, because what they've done is reverse the whole asset price inflation from 2009 to just last year. That's almost a 13-year steady asset price inflation. By raising the interest rates, all of a sudden, they've put downward pressure on the bonds. So the bonds that went way up in price when interest rates are falling, now they go down in price, because if you have a higher yielding bond available, the price of your low yielding bond falls so that it works out to yield exactly the same. Well, also, there's been a withdrawal of money from the banks in the last year for obvious reasons. The banks are the most monopolized sector of the American economy. Despite the fact that interest rates were going up, despite the fact that banks were making much more money on their loans, they were paying depositors only 0.2%. And
we live in a time of monopolies. It is kind of interesting that it's like it's really returning to the pre-New Deal kind of status quo, right? Like the turn of the century and like the time of the Great Depression. The time of the robber barons and the massive monopolistic interests. No, Johnny, we pushed the deprogram to next week, next Wednesday. Right? What happened in the 30s? I can't quite put my finger on it. But it's been this like century-long process of rolling back all those modest reforms, right? And you look at the New Deal and FDR basically saving capitalism, creating this middle class out of that period, like actually creating genuine economic opportunity in the United States and in the West, and taking back some economic power from these vastly powerful economic interests. And it's been this, like, from the business plot onward, it's been this century-long process of just slowly clawing back all those kind of meager gains that the American ruling class kind of were allowed to be put into place because it basically saved them from socialist revolution. And it's been this century-long process of clawing all that back, and now we just live in the shadow of that, of all those meager economic protections being stripped away, and all these monopolies, all these industries trending back in that direction, and power and wealth concentrating in this extremely privileged and wealthy upper class again. Where do I find that Michael Hudson clip? Old Dutch has got it there. And I highly recommend that everyone follow the Geopolitical Economy Report. Ben Norton, friend of the stream, someone that we lean on often to explain some of these things to us. The ruling class does play the long game. That's right. That's right. And we're living in the consequence of that.
And imagine, why would, if you are a fairly well-to-do person and
the
you
business
have
class realized a full fascist takeover wouldn't have worked out so well, then they needed to bide their time, and now it's close. And in addition to a century of clawing back all these economic reforms, these modest economic reforms, which didn't go nearly far enough and weren't inclusive enough either, important to point out as well, was targeted mainly to white people and left out. A lot of people were left behind, in case anyone gets any ideas about how prosperous that was. But it's been, a century of clawing back those economic reforms, and it's been a century of just nonstop anti-communist propaganda as well. And it's like you can see why they're not as worried about this kind of socialistic backlash, because they've been absolutely brainwashing people from this fire hose of anti-communist propaganda for now this entire last century, specifically since the end of the war, especially, but even prior to that. And there isn't really like an organized socialist movement that there once was. But you can see how spooked they are, and how spooked the establishment got by Bernie Sanders, the clip of fucking Chris Matthews talking about Central Park. Like, they're still incredibly spooked by the idea that the lower classes are going to kind of figure out the game here. But they seem to feel a lot more confident because there's not as much of a basis. The left has been so fractured and disorganized and purged, and people have been so pumped. The very people that need to hear it the most, have been pumped so full of anti-communist propaganda that they don't feel that they're under the same level of threat when they just keep on stripping whatever meager protections there are, keep on stripping them away.
A retirement income or a pension plan, or if you've just saved a few $100,000, you can take your money out of the bank where you're getting almost no interest at 0.2%, and you can buy a 2-year treasury note that yields 4% or 4.5%. So bank deposits were being drained by people saying, I'm going to put my money in safe government securities. Many people also were selling stocks because they thought that the stock market was as high as it could go, and they bought bought government bonds. Well, what happened then is that all of a sudden the banks,
we don't even have any
especially
productive
Silicon
forces
Valley
to
Bank,
seize.
found
That's
themselves
right.
in a squeeze. And here's what happened: Silicon Valley Bank and banks all around throughout the country were flooded by deposits ever since the 2020 COVID crisis, and that's because people were not borrowing to invest very much. Corporations were not borrowing. What they were doing was building up their cash. Silicon Valley's deposits were growing very, very rapidly, and it was only paying 0.2% on the deposits. And how was it going to make a profit? Well, it tried to squeeze every little bit of profit that it could out by buying long-term government bonds. The longer term a bond is, the higher the interest rate is. And even though long-term government bonds were only yielding, let's say, 1.5%, maybe 1.75%. They took the deposits that they were paying 2% on and lent them out at 1.5%, 1.75%, and they were getting, it's called arbitrage, the difference between what they had to pay for their deposits and what they were able to make by investing them. Well, here's the problem. As the Federal Reserve raised interest rates, that meant the value of these long-term bonds, the market price, steadily fell. Well, most people who saw this coming, every CEO that I know sold out of stocks, sold out of long-term government bonds, and they said when the Federal Reserve head said that he was going to raise interest rates, that means you don't want to hold a long-term bond. You want to keep your money as close to cash as possible. You want to keep it in 3 months Treasury bills. That's very liquid because short-term Treasury bills, money market funds, you don't lose any capital value in that at all. But the Silicon Valley Bank thought, well, they were still after every little bit of extra that they could get, and they held on to their long-term bonds that were plunging in price. Well, what you had was was a miniature of what was happening for the entire American banking system. I have a chart on that you can show on the fact the market value of the securities that banks hold. Now, when banks report to the Federal Reserve, that's exactly it. When they report, this shows the actual market value. If banks valued their assets at what they were worth on the market, they would have plunged just like you see at the bottom there. But banks don't have to do that. Banks are allowed to represent their assets according to the book value that they paid for them. So Silicon Valley Bank and other banks throughout the system have been carrying all of their long-term mortgage loans, package mortgages, government bonds at the price they paid for them, not the declining market price. And so they figured, well, we can ride this out and hold it to maturity in 25 years, as long as nobody in the next 25 years actually withdraws their money from the bank. And it's only when bank customers and depositors pull their money out that they decide that, wait a minute, now in order to raise the cash.
And I'm not looking forward to him cranking up the anti-communist rhetoric and actions either. Well, and that's the kind of scary thing, right, Sean? We've been talking about on this stream now for going on 3 years, the new Red Scare, the new Cold War, the way that's been ramping up in intensity even since we started talking about it over here, right? And we haven't even gotten to the open conflict part, right? Like there's a lot of evidence and there's a lot of appetite in the U.S. security state to have open conflict with China. There's a lot of people in the military and the security establishment and the intelligence world that believe that that's where the direction is going. So we haven't even really gotten a taste of how bad it can get. I think once it gets to that point, we got a little taste of it when Russia was invading Ukraine, right? They really turned the propaganda fire hose on full blast for a little short span of time there. But I don't even think that was the full extent of what we can see. It can get way crazier than that. I think that's only a small taste of how bad it can get. Excuse me. That's why I'm trying to move to China before it starts. Maybe they'll take us in as political refugees. I'm stuck. I'm stuck here. I'm going down with the ship. Just because of that little amount of propaganda, Chinese people were attacked in the streets and buses. Yeah, and that's only a small taste of how bad it can get. they turned up the Red Scare stuff with Russia, even though Russia's not communist. But like, it doesn't even matter to a lot of people because like they just think that they want to reinstitute the Soviet Union. They know that they're allies with China, so they still use that kind of Red Scare language, even though nothing about Russia's economy is socialist. But the Red Scare stuff really will escalate. The more the conflict with China escalates. And we haven't even gotten the bare beginnings of it.
To pay the depositors for the money they're taking out. We have to sell these bonds that we've and mortgages that we've bought, and we have to sell them at a loss. And so the bank began to sell the bonds and the package mortgages at a huge loss, and they were losing capital. Well, as it happens, that Silicon Valley Bank isn't a normal bank. A normal bank you think of as having mom and pop depositors, individuals, wage earners, but almost all the deposits, I think over 80% of the deposits in Silicon Valley Bank were by companies, mainly high-tech companies that were sponsored by private capital, special purpose private capital acquisition.
That chart
and
is a
they
little
began
disturbing.
to talk amongst each other, and some of them decided, well, let's be. It looks to me like the bank's being squeezed. Let's pull our deposits out of the small bank and put them in a big bank like Chase Manhattan or Citibank or any of the big banks that the government says are too big to fail. So you know that their money will be safe there. So there was a run on deposit. So the problem that that Silicon Valley Bank and other banks have is not that they'd made bad loans. It's not that they had committed any fraud. It's not that the U.S. government couldn't pay the bills. It's not that the mortgagers couldn't pay the bills. It was that the market price of these good loans to solvent entities had gone down and left the bank illiquid. Well, that is what is squeezing the entire financial sector right now. So just as the quantitative easing was flooding the economy with enough credit to inflate asset prices for real estate, stocks, and bonds, the tightening of credit lowered the asset prices for bonds, certainly, for real estate too. For some reason, the stock market has not followed through, and people say, well, there is an informal government plunge protection team that's artificially keeping the stock market high, but how long can it really be kept high? Nobody really knows. So the problem is that the 2009 crisis wasn't a systemic crisis, but now the rising interest rates have created a systemic crisis because the banks, by the Federal Reserve, by saving the banks' balance sheets, by inflating the prices for capital assets, by saving the wealthiest 10% of the economy from losing any of their money, by solving that problem, they've boxed themselves into a corner. They cannot let interest rates rise without making the entire economy look like Silicon Valley Bank, because that's the problem. They've the assets that banks hold.
I love that we can watch this on YouTube on the geopolitical economy report. I always forget the name. The geopolitical economy report. Again, I would literally like to get this perspective maybe on mainstream media, in addition to all the like financial ghouls saying everything's not going to be totally fine. You know, it'd be nice to actually get someone giving this analysis on CNN or MSNBC or Fox Business or whatever.
Are stuck. Now, a number of people have said,
I miss Multipolarista as well, but honestly, I do actually kind of like a geopolitical economy report doesn't sound like partisan. It doesn't sound like scary or intimidating. This is something that like an MSNBC dad could open up on YouTube and be like, "What's this? What's this, Margaret? The geopolitical economy report, huh? Oh, that sounds kind of interesting. I wonder what their read is on all this, huh?" You know what I mean? I think it can like work on people that way. That's my like normie centrist dad voice. What's this, honey?
Well, why didn't the banks, if they couldn't?
Good Lord, some of this sounds like Kremlin propaganda.
recover their deposits, why didn't they do what banks did in 2009? And in 2009, the bank, Citibank, Chase, all the big banks went to the Federal Reserve and they did sort of repo deals. They would pledge their securities and the Fed would lend them money against their securities. This wasn't a creation of money. None of this quantitative easing appeared as an increase in the money supply. It was all done by balance sheet manipulation. And the banks are able to go to the Fed, or instead of selling the bonds, people said, why couldn't Silicon Valley Bank simply borrow short-term money? You want to pay the depositors? Okay, borrow the money, pay the 4%, but don't sell, it's not going to last for very long. Once the Fed sees how systemic the problem is, they'll certainly.
I'm sorry, I just saw something here. This is such sad behavior. These fucking people that talk about like the snowflakes or whatever, all this, like Turning Point USA, they had a post today. Oh, did you know that Hitler was actually a socialist? Did you know the Nazis were actually socialists? Sorry, just a little like sidebar here. And I just said like, hey, can you just go ahead and read the first little bit of this poem and just repeat what it says? That's all. Conservatives love this poem. They love this fucking poem. First, they came for the small business owners. They always say this kind of shit. But at the same time, they're like, but yeah, the Nazis are socialists. I'm just like, can you just like, what does this say? Just literally just repeat what this says, please. Look at this shit. Turning Point USA. This is just sad. Sad behavior. These people don't care about debate. They don't care about the marketplace of ideas. I literally just asked, just read the poem. That's all. Literally just read the first few lines of the poem and let me know what it says. That's all. Not even in a mean way. I mean, really, the poem does articulate the reason that whole Nazis are socialists argument kind of falls apart, right? They came for the first and foremost. They came for the communists. They came for the socialists. They came for the trade unionists. Then they came for the Jews. Generally, if you are a socialist, you don't imprison immediately upon taking power the communists, socialists, and trade unionists before going after the ethnic groups that you don't like. Kind of a strong indication that is not accurate. Anyway, let's continue this. Just Turning Point USA. Jesus Christ.
Turn out to be cowards and roll back the interest rates to what they were. But there's a problem. If the repo market, in other words, the repo is the repossession. It's the market that banks go to if they want to borrow from larger banks. You want to borrow overnight credit.
This is some guy, Rob Russo, some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Dan Simpson, hello. Get in, Dan Raiders. What is up, folks? I'm Rob. Thank you, Dan, for the raid. Everyone give our friend Dan Simpson a follow. We're big I Dan Simpson heads over here on this stream. Thank you, Dan. We just watched this. Oh, good. Yeah, this is good. This is really good analysis. I am a sick individual. That's right. Unfortunately. We have another Richard Wolff clip as well that we could take a look at also. Dan, how are your stocks doing, though? I know you're watching this video and paying attention to what's going on there. Are your stocks doing okay, though? I know Dan's got a lot of money tied up in the markets. I know Dan's got a lot of money tied up in the stocks, the different products, what have you. How's your portfolio looking, Dan? Mostly in derivatives. Okay. Good. Very nice. The bailout, like all others, is a huge fuck you to everyone that doesn't have stocks. Yeah, I mean, as I've been pointing out, we have this basic fucked up inverted understanding about the economy and who needs to get bailed out whenever their bad decisions lead to them losing out, and who needs to learn this harsh lesson of losing everything in order to understand and have better behavior. We even talked about it because, like, even there are other people that have their funds tied up in these banks though as well, and that's, I think, an important thing to point out as well. The way that average people are kind of held hostage in this system, so the uber wealthy can just engage in this totally consequence-free, risk-free gambling, basically, with everyone else's money. And then when these moments come and the line starts to go down, that's what they justify getting a bailout each and every time, because they're like, well, look at all these retirement funds and all average people that are being losing too. It's not just us, but that's kind of how they get you, isn't it? Daddy government, I know I spend all my time saying you shouldn't exist so I can rule like a neo-feudal overlord, but can you please bail me out? I'm too big to fail. Oh, that was like an Elmer Fudd kind of voice there that I just did. Here in Canada, we have this fascist twerp Poilievre whinging about how the barest COVID assistance causes massive inflation. Yeah, the just inflation. Anytime you give people money to buy groceries, that's a no-no. It's economics 101. It's the first thing they teach you. It's the first thing they teach you. I made Rob do the voice. Honestly, when I started seeing the please, I was like, I debated with myself whether to actually do the voice. You kind of tricked me. You kind of tricked me there. The just inflation. That's right. You don't gamble in this casino. We won't bail you out when we crash the casino, even though it only fucks you up when it crashes. That's right. It's like they hold all of us hostage, so they can just do this fucking game. It must be nice, right? It must be nice to go to the casino and just to know that no matter what, imagine you could just go to the casino and just put everything in these incredibly wild bets, and you know that if you lose everything, it's no big deal, right? It's no big deal. You lose everything. If someone's going to come over and just be like, hey, don't worry about it. I got you. It happens. Listen, don't beat yourself up. Don't beat yourself up. It happens. Here you go. I'm going to fix you right back up. That must be nice, right? It opens you up to take all kinds of big risks, because you're just like, why would I? Who cares about risk? Who cares about risk? Putting people's retirement savings and mortgages and, life savings. Who cares if I just throw it all on black? If I hit, then it's great for everyone, and if I lose, they might lose a little, but I walk away. I'm totally fine. How many once in a lifetime financial events we've had in the last 40 years? Yeah, it's like this is our normal, stable economic system now. It's just this happens just in repeating cycles, closer and closer together. I'm sure that's nothing. Yeah, you took the risk. That was so brave of you. Here's some free money. That's it. We appreciate that you tried, okay? It's hard to go out there and take these big stupid risks, and we appreciate that you had the courage to do that. Here you go. Here's your money back. Those cycles are just human nature. This is the only way. This is the only possible economic system we can ever have. Anytime we differentiate from this at all, oh boy, you wouldn't even want to know. Bad things happen. Bad things happen. Let's continue this.
In the repo market, the bankruptcy law was changed in order to protect these sort of non-bank lenders. And it was changed so that if a bank makes a currency swap, if it says, here is, I'm going to give you $1 billion worth of packaged government
Yeah, at least it's not
bonds,
socialism.
and you'll give me a loan. If the bank then goes under and becomes insolvent, as Silicon Valley does, the bonds that have pledged for repo are not available.
For sure, it is
to be
the
grabbed
natural cycle.
by the
These
bank itself
corrections,
and to make the
call them.
depositors whole. The repo banks, the large banks, are made whole because Congress said, well, we have a choice. Either we can make the economy rich or we can make the banking sector rich. Who gives us our campaign contributors? The banks. To hell with the economy. We're going to make sure the banks don't lose the money.
Here's your money back, and here's some incredibly tepid reforms that'll be almost immediately repealed or ruled unconstitutional. You know all those risks that you took that led to you losing all your money? Listen, here's the money back, but don't do it again, though. Right? I'm very stern. I'm sternly telling you, don't do it again. You knock that off. You know, that's basically what it is.
And that the 1% that own the banks don't lose money. We'd rather
this is the last
voters
time
lose the money because that's
serious
how democracy works in America. So the result is that there was a lot of pressure against Silicon Valley trying to protect itself in the way that banks were able to do back in 2009. All they did was sacrifice themselves, was sell the existing securities they had in order to pay the depositors before they were closed down on Friday afternoon, before closing hours. And that led them in the problem today before President Biden decided to bail them out and then blatantly lied to the public by claiming it's not a bailout. And how can it not be a bailout? He bailed out every single uninsured depositor because they were his constituency. Silicon Valley is a Democratic Party stronghold, as most of California is. And there's no way that Biden and the Democratic Party was going to let any wealthy person in Silicon Valley lose a penny of their deposits because it knows that it's going to get huge campaign contributions in gratitude for the 2024 election. So the result is that, of course, they bailed out the banks, and President Biden weaseled his way out of things by saying, well, we didn't bail out the bank stockholders. We only bailed out the billions of dollars of depositors.
It's very revealing to see how the financial press treated Silicon Valley Bank. In fact, just before, on the eve of it imploding,
you can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Bailing out TRRS with my monthly subscription.
Thank you very much, Cutman, for the 19 months. Tier 1. I appreciate that. And please, anyone else, I'm 90 minutes into this thing, anyone else that wants to bail me out by continuing to support this content and making my line go up and my number go up. A lot of lines are going down right now, including mine lately, the last couple of days. So if you enjoy this content, the TRRS, you enjoy tuning in,
you can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Here on twitch.tv/Rob Rousseau. And you want to support this community and this content and the work that I do here, please subscribe, folks. Like James Ed Smith. Like our friend James. Thank you, James, for the gifted sub. Thank you, James. The friendship triangle is too big to fail. Exactly. We don't even want to imagine the massive consequences it would have to not just me, to all of our lives if the friendship triangle was to ever fail. We just can't let it happen, unfortunately. It can't let it happen. It's become too important to me. It's become too important to you. It's too important to this entire website of Twitch. You know? We don't even want to imagine the devastation it would have. The broader consequences if the friendship triangle was to one day collapse. We all know that it's not going to happen. Liquidity always available in Rob's clout market. Exactly. Absolutely. On a random note, I heard QS won in San he sent down. Is that true? Yeah, I think they just won in a liberal stronghold. Without the triangle, Twitch will be abandoned. We don't even want to imagine how dangerous that would be. But I know the heroic and generous community members of TRRS will not let it happen. I will not lose faith. I will keep upholding faith in this system. Anyway.
SVB as one of America's best banks in 2023. And that was for 5 years straight, praising this bank. And I think it's important to go look at SVB's website and to see how it portrayed itself, what it was boasting of. If you go to the Silicon Valley Bank website, they say they boast that 88% of Forbes 2020 next billion-dollar startups are SVB clients. Around 50% of all U.S. venture capital-backed tech and life science companies bank with SVB. And in fact, just before it imploded, 56% of the loans that SVB had made were to venture capital firms and private equity firms. And if you go down on their website, they boast up to 4.5% annual percentage yield on deposits, which is incredible. I mean, most banks offer 0.2% yield. SVB wrote on their website, they say, help make your money last longer with our startup money market account. Like with the savings account, you'll earn up to 4.5% annual percentage yield on deposits.
Up to. I could say, why don't they say up to 50% a year? Up to, you can say anything you want. Obviously, I think on this case, they were looking at capital gains. They were factoring capital gains into it. That means asset price gains. This wasn't a income yield so much. It was a overall yield on making the depositors part of the mutual speculation. But the depositors, we know that 80% were people like Peter Thiel. They were large private capital firms. And one of the problems is if you have a lot of well-connected rich people who are the major depositors that they're talking to in this case, they talk to each other. And when they see that there's no way that the bank can pay them for anywhere near 4.2% anymore, they jump ship. And that's exactly what happened. They talked to each other and there was a run on the bank. Now, most people think of a run of the bank of being, the madness of crowds. This wasn't the madness of crowds. The crowd was not mad. The bank may have been mad, but the crowd was perfectly rational. They said, look, I think the free lunch is over. Let's pull our money out. What we want now is not to hope for and pray for a 4.2% return. Let's just move for safety. If you have $1 billion, you're more concerned with keeping that $1 billion safe than actually making an income on it. And I think that's what happened. And when you say up to, that's funny language.
And Michael, I know you're friends with Pam Martins and Russ Martins over at Wall Street on Parade that always do great reporting.
They've done a wonderful job of following all of this.
And
they if there's anyone who shouldn't be bailed out, it's the wealthy billionaire depositors of that bank.
Yeah, they described Silicon Valley Bank as a Wall Street IPO pipeline in drag as a federally insured bank. And I just want to read what they wrote here, which really summarizes it very well. SVB was a financial institution deployed to facilitate the goals of powerful venture capital and private equity operators by financing tech and pharmaceutical startups until they could raise millions or billions of dollars in a Wall Street initial public offering, an IPO. And you mentioned, Michael, that the U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen claimed that the U.S. government is not going to bail out the depositors, these private equity firms and such and startups at SVB. But in reality, only $250,000 of their deposits were actually federally insured. But we were seeing that actually the U.S. government is ensuring that all of their deposits, including above $250,000, is going to be paid to them. So essentially, what the Federal Reserve, backed by the Treasury with a $25 billion war chest in supporting this operation, what they're essentially saying is that there is that deposit insurance on commercial banks in the United States, including ones with very high interest-bearing deposits. It's basically infinity. There is no limit on federally insured accounts. It's no longer actually $250,000, which only incentivizes other firms in the future to deposit their earnings into very risky banks that offer very high interest rates they can't pay out because they know that the U.S. government will bail them out.
Well, Janet Yellen also said that Ukraine was going to win the war with Russia. I think she's sort of the reincarnation of Pinocchio. You're never going to have a Federal Reserve head say that there's going to be a problem. Bankers are not allowed to tell the truth. That's why one of the worst thing that can happen to a banker is that they get COVID, because when you get COVID, sometimes you're not able to lie quickly, and it's a surefire way of losing the job. That's part of it. But there's another reason. If you have a banker be aware of the systemic risk that I just explained, the risk that is for the whole economy if it ever tries to go back to normal. which it can't again without causing a crisis, then you're disqualified for the job, or you're called overqualified. In order to be a bank examiner or a bank regulator, you have to believe that every problem can be kicked down the road, that there are automatic stabilizers and the market is going to solve everything.
This is some guy,
Thanks
Rob
to the
Russo,
management of
some
the
leftist
marketplace.
based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Oh boy, Sam Sater, what a fucking nightmare. Everyone hide. Everyone hide. Get to the bunkers. To the bunkers. It's Majority Report. Raiders. It is a happy raid day. Hello, Raiders. Thank you for joining us. Please smash the follow button. I'm Rob. Hello. Nice to have you. Get in here. I'm not going to be taking out any books. I don't have my gun holsters. I got one of the ankle holsters. I got one of those little baby guns on the ankle. You know those? When you have to turn in your badge and your gun. And the commissioner's like, and the backup. The captain.
You can count on me.
You get the little
You're gonna have
ankle
good
gun
old
out there.
Rob to talk you through all this.
TRRS guns.
Pete Cicata, thank you very much for the 3 months of Tier 1. Thank you. Yeah, I just heard the market is going to solve everything. That's right. Yeah. That's all you need to know. But I think like we need to be paying attention to that as well. Like when Biden is out there every single day being like the market is fine, the banks are fine, all these like official representatives of the elite class are out there trying to be like everything's okay, everything's good, is probably a sign that behind the scenes they're panicking, right? Like we're seeing the level of panic with all the way that these like totally unsubstantiated fears are leading to these runoffs and leading to this chaos. I do not believe that they think that it's actually fine. And I appreciate Michael Hudson using that kind of analogy too about kicking it down the road. That's what we've been talking about lately, right? That's all we've been living in this economic system that's just on this verge of collapse for years. And they keep, every time that it starts to happen, will slap whatever Band-Aid on to keep the thing going and kick the can down the road a few years. So that they're hoping that whoever the next guy is around is going to be holding the bag. You know, that seems to be, it's like this big tank that's just leaking, right? This big vat that's just leaking all over the place. And there's these little Band-Aids and little patchwork all over the thing. And somehow it's still holding on to something. Who's this?
One cloud, please. No cloud cut for Daddy Bezos.
Oh boy, thank you very much. I gotta find where the... Oh shit. Hold on. I'm gonna say thank you in one moment. I'm going to say thank you in just one moment. Where's Street? Okay, fuck. I've got too many tabs open. Jesus. I'm going to say thank you in just one moment. When I find my dashboard that shows me all the latest activity. J. Schmaltz, 69. Thank you for the 1337. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you for helping my number go up and my line go up. And once again, folks, please, if you can, subscribe to TRRS. I had too many of those Chinese milking videos open. Oh boy. Listen, do you want me to do the research so I can get these terms correct when I call out people like Jordan Peterson, or don't you? You want to just be going in haphazard, just claiming it's all kinds of stuff? I like to be accurate when I use this kind of language, okay? So excuse me. It's called being a journalist. It's called doing research. Just because I want to get the right terminology. For this, people make fun of me. I think that's unfortunate when I'm trying to do good journalism here. Let's continue this.
And if you don't believe that,
You've just become an
you're,
elite member of
blackballed.
the Friendship
goodness.
Triangle.
Gen X Bushy, thank you very much for the 5 gifted subs. Thank you, Gen X Bushy. Very much appreciated. Thank you. The line is slowly but surely going up. There's one stable investment you can still make in this crazy topsy-turvy world. There's one stable investment that you can still make. And that's by subscribing to TRRS or donating or buying the dip on FriendCoin, tipping, or what have you. All of these things will never let you down. You get a return on investment, right? That's what financial investing is all about. You want to get a return on that. And when people subscribe to this program, they get something in return that's even more valuable than money. It's called friendship. It's called community. It's called camaraderie. And that's more valuable than your little $5, you know?
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Your precious little $5. Thank you very much, Brian, for the gifted sub as well. Thank you. Let's continue this. We got a lot to get through still. Let's keep going. But please subscribe.
And are never going to be promoted. So the last person you're ever going to want to explain anything, whether it's Alan Greenspan or his successors, is the head of the Federal Reserve.
Michael, I want to talk about the scheme that the Federal Reserve has created in order to bail out Silicon Valley Bank and its clients without calling it a bailout. And I'm going to look at a very good thread that was done by the post-Keynesian economist Daniela Gabor, and she's tweeted that she has spent 15 years researching central banks' collateral, and she has never heard of a single central banker contest the common wisdom that there should be haircuts. Instead, what we see is the Fed is paying par value. So the Fed has this program called the Bank Term Funding Program, and essentially it's giving extremely favorable loans to Silicon Valley Bank and other banks, and which are essentially government subsidies. And instead of using as collateral the treasury securities and other assets that are owned by Silicon Valley Bank, or at least that were, instead of using their market value, the Federal Reserve is using the value at par, the face value that was printed on the treasury securities that are held by Silicon Valley Bank and other banks that need to be bailed out. So essentially what they're saying is that only average working people are subject to the discipline of the market. But
this would be a good TRRS hat. I would like to make a TRRS hat. Eventually, we'll get that as well in the old merch store there.
Banks, they don't actually have to go along with market value for their securities. They can be bailed out by using as collateral the values of what they originally bought the security at before the Fed raised interest rates and the price of those bonds decreased. So in short, what it is socialism for the rich, for big corporations and for the commercial banks, and capitalism for everyone else. Daniela Gabor said she's never seen this in 15 years of research. Have you ever seen something like this?
Well, this is what I said at the very beginning of our discussion today. I said the banks are able to carry their assets at the price they purchased it at. That was called the book value, not the current market value. Well, if for years in the 60s and 70s, if you had banks carrying their or a corporation carrying real estate at book value, people were looking over these balance sheets saying, aha, they're going to value their real estate at what they bought it for in the 1950s, and now it's tripled in value. Let's raid that corporation and take it over, break it up, and sell the real estate. That was how money was made in the 60s and 70s, and even more in the 80s. But that's when asset prices are going up. But when you mark to purchase price, book value, instead of the market value, you're going to have this disparity. That's exactly the problem. And you're quite right about the double standard that the government has. Look at the double standard with the student loan debtors. They are unable to pay their student loans without making a big sacrifice. But Biden has made sure that they're not going to be bailed out because he's the man who sponsored the bankruptcy bill saying that student loans are not subject to bankruptcy laws to be written down. Every other kind of asset, if you go bankrupt, can be written down to the current market value for what you owe, but not student loans. They're kept sacrosanct.
Beautiful.
So there's a diametric opposite economic philosophy when it comes to what wage earners and consumers owe, and what the financial and real estate sector owes. The Biden administration and the Republicans say that no billionaire should lose a single penny. No bank or real estate company should owe anything. We will guarantee to bail out that they are risk-free. We've transferred all of the risk onto the voters who put us in power, because we say that maybe you'll be a billionaire someday. You don't want to hurt
Love
them,
this
do you?
economic
Or
system.
whatever their politics.
Greatest
politicking
economic
is.
system in the world.
This double standard is what is squeezing the economy now by not making not permitting the financial sector from taking a penny loss. Somebody has to lose, and the losers are the non-financial economy, the real economy of production and consumption.
Michael, another factor in this is crypto. While this is happening, it's also in the wake of a disastrous collapse in big parts of the cryptocurrency industry. You yourself have always been very skeptical and have criticized this crypto industry, and you can talk about that. I mean, I've done many interviews with you over the years. Going back on the record, people can see that you were proven right about this. Of course, Silicon Valley Bank, as its name suggests, is definitely involved in the tech sector in Silicon Valley. But before SVB collapsed, we saw Silvergate collapsed, and Silvergate was very heavily invested, or at least many of its depositors were companies invested in crypto. And then on March 12th, there was another bank that went down, which unlike SVB and Silvergate, those were in California. The third bank to go down was Signature Bank, which is based in New York City. And 30%, almost 1/3 of Signature Bank's deposits were cryptocurrency businesses. So maybe you can talk about crypto's role in all of this. And of course, this comes at a time when Sam Bankman-Fried, the fraudster who ran the FTX exchange, he was exposed to the world for committing literal fraud and losing billions of dollars in really overnight.
Well, the whole mythology and fantasy of crypto has been burst, especially with Banks Friedman. Crypto was supposed to be, they called it peer-to-peer lending. The peer-to-peer lending was the person who bought the crypto took money out of the bank and paid for crypto with a bank transfer fee, was called one peer. Who's the other peer? The other peer was Bankman-Fried, and he could do whatever he wanted with his money. And the crypto cover story was, well, we know that the economy is messed up, and we don't like big government, and we don't like the banks. So here's an alternative to the banks, putting your money in a bank and putting your money depending on government fiat currencies. Well, so people would put their money into crypto thinking this is something different from the banks. And yet it turns out, what did the crypto companies do? If you get $1 billion of inflow by people who want an alternative, what are you going to do with $1 billion? Well, Bankman-Fried simply bought luxury real estate and gave it money to the Democratic and Party and a few Republicans for campaign contributions to buy influence. But most of the crypto was put in the Silvergate Bank and other banks, or in government securities. I mean, where else are you going to?
Can't believe my weed smoking ape pictures weren't a good investment. You know what? Who cares what the doubters say? You know, I'm holding on to my apes. I still have my apes, and I still believe that that's a good investment. I don't care what anyone says. You know? Yeah, I invested whatever meager life savings that I had into a cartoon picture of a psychedelic ape smoking a big doobie. I'm not going to let these establishment tie wearing nerds and geeks tell me that my cartoon picture of an ape isn't worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. I still believe that it is. History will vindicate us on that. You got to buy the dip on the big weed ape. Okay, I still think that's a good idea. I don't care what anyone says. Guys, I hate the government as well. Just put your fake assets into my bank. That's right. We descend from apes, and so too shall we be descended from Bored Ape. Yes, I still believe. Okay? They're trying to trick you into valuing it, and by extension, yourself less. Thank you. Thank you. Diamond hands go to the moon. Hodl. Hodl. In fact, I'm going to go sell more of my belongings to buy another ape now. Now's the best time to buy a cartoon ape. Right? Now it's a simple. Now it's a simple equation. You can get it for a few $100s even. A cartoon picture of an ape. You're going to be kicking yourself when the market picks back up. It's cyclical. It's always cyclical with this stuff. When the market kicks back up, you're going to be kicking yourself for not taking this opportunity to buy an ape. All my apes gone, like tears in rain. There could not be a better time to buy. Thank you. I dumped all my money into Jake Paul's investment opportunity. That is unfortunate. Anyway, I'm keeping my ape. Okay, but what if ChatGPT tells us to buy the dip? Actually, there was a story that came out that actually ChatGPT last month predicted that the economy was going to collapse today. So, who knows? It's human nature for apes to go up. Right? Once it goes down, it's literally there's only one way for it to go. Yeah, look at this. And I don't know, it's just ChatGPT. What does it know? What does it know? What does that mean? The US stock market will crash on March 15th. This is from last month. Anyway, I'm sure that it's nothing.
To put $1 billion inflow. You get a bank transfer from a bank. It goes into your bank account. You have to have a bank account somewhere to hold it. And what do? The money that goes into crypto ends up in the very banks or the government securities that crypto is supposed to be an escape from. So all of crypto is a disguised bank or mutual fund that has its money in banks and government securities, except it has secrecy, so that if you're a criminal or a tax evader or a crook and you don't want the government to know what you have, you're willing to give a premium, just like the cocaine cartel will pay 10% or 20% for money laundering. Crypto was a vast money laundering operation wrapped in an idealization that a fantasy that it was an alternative to banks and government money, when of course the backing for the crypto was banks and government money. Exactly. Well, obviously, when people began to realize this and saying, wait a minute, who is running the cryptocurrency that we're holding? We don't know what it is because it's crypto. That's why it's called crypto. It can't be regulated because the government can't know what's in it or who's paying what, because it's crypto. So there's no way of regulating crypto. And needless to say, every mafiosi, every sort of financial crook finds it's like taking candy from a baby. All you have to do is say that we have an idealistic libertarian answer to socialism. So crypto was the libertarian answer to socialism. And we've seen, I think socialism won that particular fight. And the banks, of course, when people were selling the cryptocurrency had to draw on its bank account.
This sounds negative. No, he's just trying to scare away. This is a Sigma investor tactic. He's just trying to scare away the people that don't have the confidence, the people who are bold, the people who, like the great explorers, were not scared to fail, and they took these bold steps anyways. Because fortune favors the brave. So he's weeding out all the weak. He's weeding out all the people that said, "Oh, it sounds like a scam. Oh no, it sounds like a scam." And then, lo and behold, you're gone. You're out of the way, and now we can all snap it up. All the weak have been separated now, and that's the time. That's when we strike. Right? Don't be fooled.
zero in its bank account. The banks were left without money, and the banks that had to pay the crypto company to pay the crypto seller had to sell their bonds and package mortgages and take a capital loss on assets that they were carrying at original book value at purchase price, but they were only getting the market price for it. So the whole unraveling of all of this, reality raised its ugly head.
Professor Hudson, you've written an article about this, which is why the U.S. banking system is breaking up. I can link to that in the description below. China, and then you followed up and you said that the U.S. bank crisis is not over, and you warned that it could spread. And I just want to go over this briefly again, just these numbers here, that the biggest bank to ever fail in U.S. history was Washington Mutual, and that was in 2008 during the financial crash, and it had $307 billion in assets. The second biggest bank ever to collapse in U.S. history was Silicon Valley Bank with $209 billion in assets. So pretty close to Washington Mutual. And Signature Bank was the third biggest bank to collapse, which had $118 billion in assets. So clearly there are parallels to the 2008 crash. But in your article, you also pointed out that there are parallels to the savings and loan crisis of the 1980s. So what can we learn from the 1980s S&L crash and also the 2008 crash?
Well, I want to, first of all, challenge what you said about Washington.
Beanie Babies were a much better investment than crypto. At least with them, you still had stuffed animals to play with after they lost value. And that's why I've been telling people to invest in TRRS. That's right, this channel, this community. Me. Because as I've told you, unlike with crypto, you get something. You get a return on investment. You get something in exchange for that money. Your measly little $5. And you get to be friends with me. And that's real. That's a real thing. It's not parasocial. It's real. We're really friends. And everyone in the community is now your friend as well. Right? What's better than that? What's like what you prefer to see a little number in a little Excel spreadsheet go up and down? I know our friend Marty would say yes to that, but overall though, that's like what who cares about that? What matters is the people close to you in your life. You know, you get an NFT, whatever, anyone can right-click save that. No one can right-click save our friendship, though. No one can right-click save the community that you're going to have access to. Not yet, at least. That's true. Maybe one day, but today is not that day. Prince is smashing print screen and just printing out images of the stream and like flipping through them like a flip book. It's not the same thing. It's not the same. I should have an AliExpress store.
Mutual being the biggest bank to go under.
My pitching
this
today
is not at all
out.
The right way to look at it. What is important to look at is what banks were insolvent. Sheila Bair wrote in her autobiography that there was one bank that was worse than all the others, that was totally insolvent, not only incompetently managed but crooked. That bank was Citibank. But Citibank was looked over by Obama's Treasury Secretary, Tim Geithner, who worked with Bob Rubin, who was the protector of Citibank. So the fact is that not only Citibank, Citicorp, but all the big banks, Sheila Bair, who was head of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, said the banks were insolvent. So she was pressing. She said, look, Citibank should go under. Let's clean it up. Let's take it under and clean out the crooks. And Geithner said, no, the crooks are us. That's our game. So the key to look at isn't what banks actually were permitted to go under, the really crooked banks like Washington Mutual, but what banks were insolvent. Citibank and its what were the others? Wells Fargo, she mentioned. These were the banks that had the junk mortgages. Bank of America. The banks were insolvent. And when I say that the problem is just beginning, because the problem that the financial sector and the banking sector has today is endemic to finance capitalism. And the charts that I've made in Killing the Host and and also in The Destiny of Civilization, the financial sector grows by interest-bearing debt, and that's an exponential system. Any interest rate is a doubling time. Any interest rate goes exponentially, but the economy doesn't keep track. It goes on an S curve, and it goes slower and slower, and then it turns down. That's the business cycle, and it's like it depicted as a kind of sine curve up and down. The problem is that the economy can't keep pace with the ability with the debts that it owes. The ability to pay exponentially rising debt does not keep pace with this growth of debt, and that makes a collapse inevitable. This disparity between the growth curves of debt and the growth curve of the economy has been known for 5,000 years. It was already documented in Babylonia in 1800 BC. We have the textbooks, the mathematical textbooks that scribes were trained in. Antiquity knew this. Aristotle talked about it. Everybody knows about this, but it's not taught as part of the financial curriculum. The financial sector grows by different mathematical laws than the economy grows in, and that's what makes it inevitable. The savings and loan crisis was somewhat different. It is worth mentioning because much of it was the result of fraud, again, as Bill Black has explained. But here was the problem in the savings and loans and savings banks. And I discussed this in the article that you just cited. The savings banks and SNLs lent mortgage
You can
money.
count on me.
And,
You're going
they
to have
would,
good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Diego, thank you very much for the 3 gifted subs. Thank you, Diego. I appreciate that very much, and for all the support. Slowly but surely, out of sub jail. Slowly but surely, we're allowed to sub again. I'm sure that's the reason that it's been difficult the last couple of days to make my number go up and make my line go up. I'm being held back by these tech elites yet again. But I transcend. I don't let it get to me. That's the difference between me and others. Other less mentally strong streamers. Right? That's what separates me from them.
But basically,
Thank you
when I
again,
was working
Diego.
in the 1960s, interest rates were going up from about 3.5% to 4.5% for mortgages, and the banks would take deposits and they'd pay maybe 2.5% interest, and they'd make loans at 3.5% for a 30-year mortgage. So all of this sort of happened normally until the late 1970s, and in the late 1970s, because of the Vietnam War, the interest rates steadily rose because the U.S. balance of payments was getting squeezed. And finally, you had an inflation because of the war-induced shortages, Pentagon capitalism. And so Paul Volcker raised the interest rates to 20%. Well, imagine what happened. They even though they came down from 20%, after 1980, they were still very high. Well, here's a situation. The SNLs were in much the same situation that bank depositors were in the last few years. You could get a very low rate of interest from the banks, or a high rate of interest by putting your money in government securities or corporate bonds, or even junk bonds that were paying a lot of money. So people took the money out of the banks and bought higher yielding financial securities. Well, the banks were squeezed because the banks could not pay when interest rates went up to 6%, 7% for mortgages. Banks couldn't simply charge their mortgage customers more because the mortgage customer had a 30-year loan at a fixed rate of interest. So there was no way the banks could earn enough money to pay the high interest rates that were in the rest of the economy. And as a result, they were pushed under, and the commercial banks had a field day. Sheila Bair told me that the banks raped she didn't use that word, the savings banks. She said they were going to provide more money for savings banks depositors, and what they did was empty it all out and just pay themselves higher salaries. So there are, I think, no more savings banks, hardly any more SNLs. They were all cannibalized by the large Wall Street banks, emptied out as a result, and that transformed the financial structure and the banking structure of the American economy. Well, that transformation and that squeeze of getting rid of a whole class of banks is now threatening the smaller banks in the United States, the smaller commercial banks, because they're in the situation of being sort of left behind in the sense that if only the largest banks are too big to fail, in other words, they're such big campaign contributors, and they have so many of their ex-officials running the Treasury or serving as Treasury officials or going into Congress or buying congressmen that they're safe. And people who have their money in smaller banks like Silicon Valley and the others you've mentioned are nowhere near as safe as the too big to fail banks. So if a bank's not too big to fail, then it's small enough to fail. And you really don't want to keep more than $250,000 there because that's not insured. And you don't know how long Biden can get away with bailing out the wealthy depositors and just sticking it to the rest of the economy. At some point, he just can't be a crook anymore.
Michael, you've emphasized that after the 2008 crash, in addition to bailing out the big banks and all of this and the idea of too big to fail, one of the ways that the U.S. had a so-called recovery, although you've pointed out it wasn't really recovery, is through quantitative easing. And you can see quantitative easing really as a kind of drug for the economy where money was so cheap, interest rates were so low that, now that interest rates are rising, the federal funds rate is going up, it makes it more expensive to get money. And this bubble that was created by the Fed is beginning to burst. And you've argued that this is maybe going to push them back toward quantitative easing, although Jerome Powell has insisted that he's potentially going to continue increasing the federal funds rate. And
that was on Friday he said that. Yesterday he withdrew. He said,
Matt, this is some very severe hooliganism we're seeing. Seeing some serious hooliganism happening.
I'm sorry. We crashed the banks. Never mind. We're now that I realize that I'm not only hurting labor, but I'm hurting our constituency, the 1%. Of course, we're going to roll it back. We're not going to. Don't worry, 1%. Give your money to the party. We're going to make everything okay for you.
Yeah, and if you look at a graph of asset price inflation, we see that it seems like the economy in the U.S. is at a point where it's so financialized and it relies so much on these bubbles that it doesn't seem like it can survive without low interest rates and without quantitative easing. So you've argued that this crisis is here to stay. There needs to be fundamental systemic change. It's going to either be stagflation with the continuation of these policies of QE and low interest rates, or it's going to be economic crisis like we're seeing now.
This is the corner into which the Fed has painted itself. This is we're in the culminating part of the Obama depression. This is what Obama set in motion by bailing out the banks and supporting the banks instead of the economy as a whole. Obama and Geithner and Obama's cabinet declared war on the economy by the 1%. And that the amazing thing is that the economy doesn't see how dangerous what he did was and how consciously he sold out the voters that had put their trust in him to do everything he could to hurt them, because the degree to which he could hurt the economy was the degree to which the 1% and the 10% was able to make the killing that you just showed in the asset price inflation chart. So this is not the class interest that Marx talked about. It's not the class interest of employers versus wage earners. It's the financial class and it's allied real estate and insurance class, the fire sector, against the economy at large, the real economy of production and consumption. That is what we're seeing, and something has to give. And in every case, both the Republicans and the Democrats say, if something has to give, we're willing to shrink the economy in order to protect the financial, insurance, and real estate sector from taking a loss, because that's
almost like they're the ones that own the country.
Have its assets. We're not in industrial capitalism anymore. We're in finance capitalism, and the way that finance capitalism works is very different from the dynamics of industrial capitalism as was forecast in the 19th century.
Michael, as we start to wrap up here, I want to ask you about corruption. This is something that you mentioned in your articles analyzing the SVB crash and other banks crashing. You talk about campaign financing, which you addressed, but also regulatory capture is, I think, an important point. And you wrote that to understand this, we should look at who the bank regulators and examiners are. They are vetted by the banks themselves, chosen for their denial that there is any inherent structural problem in our financial system. They are true believers that financial markets are self-correcting by automatic stabilizers. Talk about the concept of regulatory capture and how really it's just corruption, but we don't call it that because the U.S. acts as though other countries are corrupt, but the U.S. isn't corrupt.
Well, the center of this corruption, again,
famously non-corrupt United States of America.
If you notice, who were the bank regulators over the Silicon Valley and the others? These banks that have gone under are all regulated by the Federal Home Loan Bank Board. If there's any bank board that is totally run by the banks that regulates, It's the Federal Home Loan Bank Board, and they look at themselves as protecting the banks under their authority. Instead of regulating them, they say, "How can we help you make more money?" Before that, the most corrupt regulators were the Comptroller of the Currency group. Now, banks have a choice. Banks are able to choose what regulator is going to regulate them. And if you're a banker and you want to be a crook, you know just who to go to. I want to be regulated by the Federal Home Loan Bank Board because I know that they'll let me do anything I want, and that they owe their job to the fact that I can get them fired at any time if they do something that will not let me do whatever I want. If they will try to say that what I'm doing is fraudulent, I'll say this is socialism. You're regulating the market. This is market regulation. Come on, theft is part of the market. Don't you get that? And the bank regulator said, yes, you're right. The free market under the libertarian Federal Home Loan Bank Board is fraud is part of the free market. Theft is part of the free market. Anything else is socialism. So of course we're not socialists. Of course you can do whatever you want. And as long as you have bank regulators like that who believe that as Alan Greenspan put it, why would a banker ever cheat somebody? If he cheated somebody, he wouldn't have them as customers anymore. Well, if you've ever been pickpocketed in Times Square or anywhere else in New York, you notice that
How
the
fucking
pickpocket doesn't
gullible.
say,
How much of a
"Gee,
mark
I
do
better
you
not
have to be to buy
steal a
that?"
wallet of this guy because then he'll never trust me again." Well, you're never going to meet the guy again. It's a hit and miss. It's a hit and run. And that's how the financial sector has worked for the last century. And already at the early 20th century, there were critics of how banks were structured, and the British critics especially. This was during World War One. The argument came out, well, why maybe Germany is going to win the war because they have a much more industrially organized banking system. Banks have been industrialized, but the British banks and stockbrokers especially are hit and run and just want a quick payout and leave the company emptied out. Well, the way to make money most quickly, if you're a financier in America, is asset stripping. You borrow money, you buy out a corporation, you load it down with debt and empty it out and leave it as a bankrupt shell. That's finance capitalism. That is what you're taught to do in business schools. That's how the market economy works. Raid a company, take it over, sell off the wealthy assets, pay yourself a management fee, pay yourself a huge dividend. This is why I think Bed Bath & Beyond is going under. It's why a whole bunch of companies are going under. You borrow money, you take over a company, you let the company borrow money, you pay it to yourself as the new owner as a special dividend, and then you leave the company owing a debt with no current income, able to cover the debt, and it goes bankrupt. And you say, well, that's the market. And of course, it doesn't have to be the market. It doesn't have to be this way, but that's the way in which the market is structured. And you'd think that this is the kind of thing that academic economics courses would teach about. But instead of teaching people how to make an alternative to this and how to avoid this kind of...
They teach you that there is no alternative. And the other alternative is bad, evil. Evil, bad. Anyone that actually gets any kind of formal education in these concepts is told like all of the exact opposite of what the takeaways should be, and basically is trained to continue to uphold the system at all costs, and to propagate this backwards and regressive notion about social spending and the market, the way the market works. Sure, it's bad here in this dank cave of vipers, but who knows what lies outside? Exactly. If someone tells me they're an econ or finance major, I walk away. Exactly. And as I've said, it's like the study, like the formal study of economics, not an actual science. I've said this many times. The market is an unknowable and terrible elder god, and all we can do is sacrifice in its name. And when you start to ask questions, that angers the line. It angers the market. When you start to question these things, you must never question. Exactly. We have freedom in the Viper Cave. Every 4 years, we come together and determine who the head Viper is. And we get to elect one of the different Viper sects. That's called freedom, baby.
rip-off economy and smash and grab economy, they show you how to do it. So, given the way in which public consciousness is taught and the skill of financial lobbyists in telling people that they're getting rich to borrow more money to buy a house whose price is going to go up and up if only they take on more and more debt, if people imagine that the economy is recovering by taking on debt to make housing more expensive and stocks and bonds and hence the retirement income more expensive, then you're living in an inside-out world that turns out to be a nightmare.
Well, to conclude here, Michael, my last question is where you
I'm going
think
to vote
we
for the
should be
racist
keeping an
vipers next
eye
time.
on
These
the
eugenics
US
vipers don't
economy, what
shape
other
up.
financial institutions could be next. You wrote in your analysis that the Biden administration is simply kicking the can down the road until the 2024 election, that these are fundamental systemic problems, and there may very well be more banks that crash in the next weeks, months, years. So where should we be looking, and what's the final word you want to leave us with?
The word is derivatives. That's what we didn't talk about. There are $80 trillion of derivatives. That is bets, casino bets on whether interest rates will go up or down, whether bond prices will go up or down. And there's been a gigantic increase in the volume of bets that banks have made, maybe 100 times as large as it was back in 2008, 2009. And one of the reasons it could grow so much is with interest rates of almost zero, people could borrow from the bank and essentially go to the races and make bets on currencies, exchange rates, interest rates. But now that interest rates are beginning to go up, it costs more to make the bets. And even if you bet right on a derivative, you can put down a penny and buy buy $100 bond and bet that this bond is going to go up 1 penny. And if it goes up 1 penny, you've doubled your money. But if it goes down 1 penny, then you've lost it all. This is the kind of this is what happens when you have a high leveraged bet on derivatives or something else. And the derivatives
This
are
just seems like a great system.
what
I love
everybody's
this.
worried about because there's no real.
I love that all our
We
futures
just
are
know
tied
that I
up in
think
this.
Chase has J.P. Morgan Chase has maybe 58
It makes me feel
billion in
good.
derivatives. Ellen Brown has just written
Don't
a
worry, it's not
wonderful
like these
article on
derivatives caused the stock market
that's,
crash
all
before,
over the
exactly.
internet. And she's a lawyer as well as a bank reformer. The next
Nothing
big
to worry about.
crash is going to be some bank that's made a wrong bet in derivatives, and the wrong bet has just wiped out all the bank capital. What is going to happen then? That's the next, as they say, shoe that is going to fall.
Yeah, why do our
Well,
paychecks
Michael,
have
I
to
want
be
to thank
tied
you
into
so
this?
much for joining us to explain these important topics, and not only just for joining us, but for joining us specifically on your birthday. Happy birthday! It's a real pleasure. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. I want to invite everyone to go check out Michael's website at michael-hudson.com. There you can find links to his articles, to his book.
Read and follow Michael Hudson's work. Here's the video from Geopolitical Economy Report, which we enjoy a lot over here on this program. Do both of those things. Follow Michael Hudson and make sure you follow Ben Norton's work as well. I got another Richard Wolff video too. It's not quite as long, but maybe we can check that out also. I'm very low energy today. I don't know why. I'm operating on pretty much the same level of caffeine that I normally am, but I don't know. I don't think I slept that badly last night. It wasn't great. It wasn't a great night of sleep. It wasn't that bad, but I'm very low energy and having a hard time like cognitively today. Normally, as you know, I'm very sharp-witted. Able to riff with the best of them. And I feel like my brain is like floating in a tank of molasses right now. Yeah, the time did just change. I guess that's part of it. My kid was sick again as well, and he was coughing last night. He was up probably at 6:45. I went to bed kind of late. It could be Havana syndrome as well. But I have definitely felt that it was difficult today to articulate what I'm thinking to the extent that I feel I'm usually able to. Not the usual high-flying moves we're used to seeing from the Ravishing One, exactly. Exactly. This is an amazing screen capture. Yeah, this is good pause face. Let's watch this too. You know, I might not be sharp today, but I follow people and pay attention to people that are sharp. And I'll let them do the talking and thinking for me. While I laugh all the way to the bank. Ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Ha ha ha.
Everybody's got a price. Everybody's gonna pay. 'Cause the $1 Million Man always gets his way.
I'm going to have to start negging people more. I'm going to have to start turning more into the $1 Million Man. If that's what it comes down to. I've been too nice. I've been shooting chat with kid gloves here lately. Been too nice. I don't start getting heelish with it over here. Ask us to bounce a ball 10 times and kick it away at 9. Oh. That was a great shtick, though. It's great because that's actually how rich people act now. Like they really just do that. And the same people that they're kicking the ball away from are like, "Thank you, sir. Can I go get that? I love you, sir." To like Elon Musk. "I'm sorry for dribbling the ball into your foot, my lord." That's how completely cucked we are. Let's watch this video.
Good day and welcome to Letters and Politics. I'm Mitch Jeserich. Today we're going to be in conversation about the collapse of two banks over the last couple of days, Silicon Valley Bank in California and Signature Bank of New York. My guest for this is Richard Wolff. Richard Wolff is a professor of economics, host of the program Economic Update, and of course you can find his work at the website democracyatwork.info. Professor Wolff, always a great pleasure, sir, to have you on this program. Thank you for taking the time today.
My pleasure, Mitch. It's always a very good moment for me to be talking with you.
It's it's funny. We became friends with the collapse after the collapse of the banking industry in 2008. And as I did then in the early days of it, it's like I didn't understand it. I'm just going to ignore this for right now. And then I had to come to you to dig me out of that intellectual hole I found myself in. Almost my reaction over the weekend when I heard about these two banks, and then I remembered, wait, this was my reaction in 2008. I better do what I did then. I better call Richard Wolff, because you do have this great ability of taking what seems to be complicated and hard to understand and showing that's actually not that complicated at all. So let me just begin. What is important to understand concerning the collapse of these two banks?
Okay, well, the first thing to say is that you're absolutely right. It is not all that complicated. Most of the complicated noise you hear from the executives and the regulators is precisely designed to make you turn away from paying much attention because they've rendered it so complicated that no sane person would follow it. I also want to tell you from personal experience that the people who run our banks are, as my cousin used to say, not the sharpest knives in the drawer. So take with a grain of salt what they're saying. Let me give you an example.
Richard, these are
March
the
11th, The Intercept, it's a very well-known podcaster on the thing. They quote the president of Silicon Valley Bank, a man named Greg Becker, giving testimony to Congress in which he requests what was eventually done, a relaxing of the post-2008 reforms, the Dodd-Frank bill and those things. He's asking for that to be taken off of his bank, and he ends his argument, and I'm
Doc,
quoting
how's
now,
it going?
just to give you an idea. Given the low-risk profile of our activities, that's the man telling the Congress how low risk his business is, and that low risk collapsed the bank last weekend. Here's what a bank does. Very simple. Commercial banks take in deposits from businesses and from individuals.
And that's all. So before we move on, though, I wanted to take a look at this very quickly as well. Sorry, where'd it go? Way too many tabs open.
They give you.
But it seems like evidence here as well. Financial markets betting bigly on Credit Suisse failure. And I guess we're going to get more of an update on that soon, which is in turn driven by central bank interest rate rises. Big finance will get the global recession it wants so dearly very, very soon. From Kit Clarenberg there. And there's evidence of that as well, where it's like a lot of these financial elites actually want a recession. There's plenty of these elites that are betting on the market to fail, right? Just like that's another way that they are able to kind of create money out of thin air. And as they've talked about, like we've had a number of like people that have prominent positions talking about the economy and advising on it, talking about how, there's too much employment and how the unemployment needs to be higher. And that's the reason that inflation is happening. Right? And there's definitely financial elites that are kind of like egging this on. They're egging it on through fear and panic, but they're also like, there's another sect that's directly benefiting from it, from the collapse in the first place. Anyway, let's go back to 1 second.
Risk profile of our activities. That's the man telling the Congress how low risk his business is, and that low risk collapsed the bank last weekend. Here's what a bank does. Very simple. Commercial banks take in deposits from businesses and from individuals. They give you, as I'm sure you've noticed, next to nothing for that deposit. You're supposed to be grateful that they're holding it for you, that it's safe, and that you get a monthly document telling you what's been happening to it. That costs them next to nothing. They then take your deposit, your money, and lend it out wherever they can get the highest rate of return, to a corporate borrower, to an individual to use as their credit card backup, and so on. In other words, the bank lives off the difference between what it pays you for your money, very little, and what it gets by lending your money out, which can be significant. One of the most important investments banks make is they buy government bonds. In other words, they take the deposit you put in and they lend it to the United States government. A little aside, if you do that yourself, you can make the difference rather than the bank. It's called getting rid of the middleman. Just don't tell the banker where you heard it, okay? Everything I'm telling you is completely legal and normal. Here's what Silicon Valley Bank did. It took in deposits, and it made loans to local startups, and it bought government bonds. And that's what it did, and it made a lot of money for a bunch of years doing that. Then, starting, as you all know, especially those of you in California, starting some months ago, high-tech encountered difficulties. It laid off hundreds of thousands of its workers, in Silicon Valley particularly, but all over. Of course,
everything we're about to tell you is legal and normal.
If the company cuts back its operations, it puts less deposits in the bank. It doesn't need them.
That actually sounds like something that would be good down here. I like it. I like it. I like to reassure people. I like to be able to reassure people, You tell people you're telling people like they can trust you, right? You want people to trust you and have confidence in you. And you tell people it's not a cult, it's not a pyramid scheme, it's not a psyop. And indeed, everything that I do tell you is legal and normal.
For the business that's now reduced. Likewise, the individuals who lost their jobs could not make their mortgage payments the way they used to. They didn't have money to put in a deposit in the bank. They were scurrying around, maybe finding a job somewhere else. Their deposits began to shrink. Well, there's a problem. If people want their deposits out and new ones aren't coming in, the only place you can go really to give the depositors their money back is to go to the bonds that you purchased and sell them and get the money and give it to your depositor. Just reverse the normal process. Here's the problem. The bonds have a price. When you lend to the government, you get a piece of paper or electronically. You've lent the government $1 million. We'll pay you back in 2 years and 6 months, and we'll give you this interest every year. That's how it works. If the interest rates go up, the price of the bond goes down. If you want, I can explain that later. It's just an arithmetic, the way it works. Since the interest rates went up dramatically over the last 8 months, in order why? To fight the inflation that really troubles the American economy,
which
the
is
Federal
still
Reserve
happening.
Decided to raise interest rates. Well, here's what happens, and it's like a human being. If you're not careful, the solution to one problem gives you a bigger problem because of the solution. That's what's happening here. The bonds went down, so the bank didn't have the wherewithal to meet the demands of the depositors who wanted their money back. Then it made a fatal mistake because they're not the sharpest knives in the drawer. The bank went out into the market and said, we need more money. We need more capital. Here's a bunch of shares. What that did, which they should have known, was to confirm in a relatively small number of people who pay folks like me to keep them abreast of what's going on. They said, oh my God, it's worse than we thought. And that began, get your money out. Because the bulk of the deposits there were not insured. So they didn't have the FDIC, the government saying, we will insure. Businesses can't do that the way individuals can. So the businesses began to withdraw, and then the bank collapsed. It did not have enough money in its investments to cover the deposits. It had badly messed up its so-called fiduciary duty. It hadn't managed properly, safely, the money that depositors gave them. That's the classic reason why banks fail, because they haven't done that well. Here's the thing that people have to kind of face, hard as it is. Money is what lubricates a capitalist economy. You know, money is what we're paid. Money is what we spend to feed ourselves, to clothe ourselves. Money makes the capitalist world go around. And so we all depend on the money system. But what we allow is an enormous influence on the money system is operated by private banks. If you talk to those bankers, they will tell you, and this is honest, we're in business to make money. We're in business to make a profit. That's what, if we make a profit, we move up the chain, we get more respect, we get more money. And if we don't make a big profit, we are disreputable. Okay, we've now arranged for a system that we all depend on, that our society and our economy depend on, but we've placed it in the hands of the people who do not do business according to what the society needs, according to what we as a people need. They're busy making money for their bank. And the person who tells you that if we each of us make money for ourselves, magically it'll all work out the best for everybody, well, that's a person you should have a short conversation with, because they're nuts. And people who quote Adam Smith forget that all the times he talked about how capitalists will screw you if you give half a chance. So that part we forget. We remember, God's invisible hand taking us around. It's not invisible, whatever else you think of God. The truth of the matter is, if you put your financial affairs in the hands of a banker, he will do a good job of making profit for the bank. That's his reward system. That's his punishment system. And we're seeing the results of that. They did what was good for them. They made a lot of money. This executive Becker himself, many millions and millions of dollars. Then when they mess up, when they cause a tremendous crisis in the whole society, the people of the country come in and rescue them. Nouriel Roubini is a professor of business quite well known in New York. He puts it nicely. We are a system in which profits are privatized and the costs are socialized. So in comes the society as a whole, the government, bails out this bank, bails out the Signature Bank, comes in and says really bizarrely, there's a limitless amount of money that the Federal Reserve will give to any bank having trouble returning money to the depositors. Oh my God, we're in a society that says we have a problem with inflation.
I'm back.
If you have a problem with inflation, opening the Fed...
I gotta walk. I'm sitting in this chair too much. This is a lower end gaming chair. And it's fine, but it's leading to some issues. We don't need to get into the how and the why and the what. It's leading to some minor issues. Let's just say that.
Window to limitless amounts of money is the equivalent of trying to put out a fire by pouring kerosene on it. That's not going to end the fire. That's going to make it flare up. So you're watching a system, and this is what's scary. It's got too many problems converging at the same time. What it does for one worsens the other. It raised interest rates to stop an inflation. It got a bank crisis. It offsets the bank crisis by opening the Fed window. Whoops, that worsens it. This is impossible. And we're watching a society implode. There's really no nice word for this. Every foreign company and individual who has put money in the United States over the...
Isn't that why a decent quality office chair is better? I'm sure it is. Unfortunately, I'm broke. Okay, I got no productive forces. I got very little productive forces. All my productive forces go into purchasing snacks for my son. This guy loves snacks. This is why I'm on here on Twitch trying to make the line and the number go up each and every day. Maybe one day I can get a nice fancy office or gaming chair. Maybe one day I can. Today is not that day, though.
years because it's
Just gotta
safe,
tough it out.
because it's stable. All that's gone, and those people are moving their money out, and it's going to change everything in this country. And the response of our leaders to blame each other is so pathetically inadequate to the problem that it really makes everything worse.
It is being reported and being said, this comes from the president himself, that it's not taxpayer money that will be used to make sure everyone who had money in these banks or get their money, but it's through some kind of a loan.
Yes, this is always wonderful. Here are the problems. The FDIC may have to insure all kinds of people who had bank accounts that are insured. And the FDIC doesn't have all that much money. And so there's almost certainly going to be, if not exhausting the money it has, it's going to seriously reduce it. So the first thing the FDIC will do, which it has the legal right to do, is raise the tax it puts on banks. Banks have to pay in to this fund to get the insurance that they can offer their depositors, okay? And guess what the banks are going to do when they have to pay that extra fee? They're going to take it out on all the rest of us. You don't call
So it's going
it
to be passed down.
That's right. You don't call it a tax, but it has exactly the same effect. Number two, if this open-ended loaning out at the time of the inflation makes the inflation worse or makes the inflation last longer, that too is a tax on the American people. Why? Because the inflation rate is markedly higher than the increasing rate of wages and salaries. So every minute that this inflation continues, and now it will either get worse or last longer or both, is going to be another form of...
That's right, Sean. And the best streamer there is, the best there was, the best there ever will be. These are my finance glasses. When I wear these, you can know you can take my financial advice seriously. When I wear these glasses, I don't even see the code anymore. You know, when you look at the Matrix, I don't even see it anymore. Finance classes.
Squeezing the American. And finally, he can't know what he says. Our presidents are like that. I'll leave it at that. He can't know because we don't know yet. No one does. What all the ramifications
So everything
will
just
be
looks normal.
of
Yeah,
this
that's
bank
right. A little
crisis.
darker.
And as I'm speaking to you, mid-level banks, which is what they're called, not the mega banks like Bank of America or Wells Fargo or those, but the middle-level banks are in terrible.
Yeah, okay, but I'm talking about Cypher, though. You know, when he's talking to Neo, and he's looking at the code, I don't even see the code anymore. You know, it's that. Not Neo later when all he sees is the code. I wouldn't like that. I would rather see people. I wouldn't want to see people as just being these like floating series of numbers and codes. That seems kind of less cool. I don't know. I can't barely
Trouble.
see the
Everybody's
monitor
pulling
when I
their money
click
out.
around, too.
No one believes this government anymore. Another sign of how bad this is the very belief. So they're pulling their money out and putting it in the big banks who don't need it. But the little banks serviced a large part of the American economy, particularly medium and small businesses. They're going to have all kinds of difficulties for the unknown future that we're facing. The government will be called in to help them. At that point, he'll have to bring in the taxes. So the promise that no taxes will be involved is a promise he's not in a position to make. He couldn't possibly know, no one does, how these ramifications play out and what solutions for the problems they create will be found. My guess, you bet we'll be using taxes, and probably in big amounts pretty soon, just like we did in 2008 and 9.
The reading that I have done on the reporting about this, and it's not exhaustive, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around all of this, but the sense from the reporting I have read is that most of the people that they talk to anyway seem to think that this has been contained, that this won't be a bigger problem throughout the system.
This is what it seemed like on Monday.
But what I'm hearing
Wolf
from
certainly
you
doesn't
is
seem
you may
convinced
not
this
dis-
idea
you may
that's
not
been
agree with that.
contained.
It's not so much that I agree or I disagree. It's that you can't know. I mean, if I told you definitely it's not contained, that would be as unjustified as they're saying to you it is. I hope it's contained. They hope it's contained. But that's all it can be at this point. I don't want to bore people, but I could show you that in 2007, as we were beginning to see mortgages fail, everyone up to George Bush, the president, assured us this was a limited problem. It had been contained. They assured that
They're
us
always going
all
to say
through the
that.
latter half of 2007 through the first half of 2008.
They're
Only
always
in the
gonna say
autumn,
that it's
basically
contained.
August, when Bear Stearns collapsed, and then it became clear. No one knows now. There's a bank in Europe, one of the greatest banks in the world, called Credit Suisse. Credit Suisse is on the edge, and it was before this. Everyone wonders, banks that were okay but on the edge, will this be?
This was yesterday as well. He was talking about Credit Suisse. This was yesterday. This is before the market opened today.
The straw that breaks the proverbial camel's back. Will this take Credit Suisse over? And we all noticed, those of us who pay attention, that Credit Suisse over the weekend admitted it's having more problems than it thought. We already knew it has a lot of problems. The regulations over there are tighter than here, so we were able to know. But Mr. Biden cannot make the promise he made. That's all I can tell you. It's not feasible at this point
happening?
to know what the problems are, let alone what tax-based solutions will be chosen by this government.
I do want to go back to something you said earlier, and that was the steps that led to the collapse, especially of the Silicon Valley Bank, which I think, it's a Bay Area bank, and I bet you most folks here in the Bay Area have never heard of this bank. But nonetheless, the steps that occurred before, because most of us did hear about these major cuts to jobs in the tech sector at the beginning of the year. And of course, we've also had interest rises, the interest rate rise because of inflation. These were important steps that led to this.
Absolutely. The decline in the high-tech employment should have been an immense warning. Sirens should have gone off above San Francisco and throughout the peninsula. What do you think it means if hundreds of thousands of people,
We've been saying this.
many of whom are paid quite well by American standards, are suddenly in a financial crash? The people who spent those wild amounts of money buying housing in and around San Francisco, giving you
You've
the
been
statistic
talking
of,
about this.
I think, the most expensive city in the country, or at least among the 3 or 4, those people all have mortgages, and those mortgages all depend on their having a salary, which they don't have.
Where can I get
anymore.
the shades? No, I do not sell these as merch. I actually bought these from an advertisement that I saw on TikTok, because one of my vices, I'm not a big fashion guy, maybe a little bit, but I don't buy a lot of new clothes, even though maybe if I had disposable income, I probably would. I do like buying sunglasses though. I have I don't spend a lot on sunglasses. These weren't that expensive. I like buying cheap gas station sunglasses. That's my main thing. That's what I like to splurge on. But I did I did purchase these from an ad on TikTok. I don't even know why I'm wearing them right now. I kind of had this idea that maybe it would bring in subs. I don't know. I don't know if that's crazy. I kind of thought people would see you see me and the algorithm shows you the little thumbnail and they see that and they're like, oh, who's this guy? Whoa. I thought maybe it would have some kind of impact with that. Maybe it'd bring in some new people that wouldn't normally want to listen to what I'm saying, but when they see me looking like this, they're like, okay, I'm listening. This is kind of what I'm hoping. Just change the dynamic, How can you not listen to this man? It's just hard because it's weird. I see this monitor in front of me with the preview of you can probably see it in the reflection, with the preview of the stream. But then I look over to this monitor where I have my chat and I can't see it. It's just totally dark. I don't know what the difference is, but especially once they see that everything's legal and normal. Exactly. They see the image, they see me. They see that they're like, wait, is this legal and abnormal? Is this illegal and abnormal? And they look down, they're like, oh, okay. I guess not. This fellow, he seems trustworthy. Glasses that block reading chat. Can you get a pair for Hassan? Hassan only sees the people that are being mean to him. And the chat can be going like the fucking Matrix, like I was talking about. And one person says something, Hassan's like, wait, hold up. He sees it. I don't even know how physically, I don't even know how it works. Whoa. Okay, that actually worked. I tilted my head 90 degrees and it worked. Anyway, let's continue. So far not as much of a successful experiment with the future cyberpunk shades bringing in viewers and subs, but we will see. Hassan pulls up their whole life story. Not like me. I engage with the wonderful, interesting, smart chatters that contribute to this program. I don't take you for granted like certain other streamers who we don't need to mention.
Which means not only do they not have money, but the banks that have mortgages out to them, what's happening? They can't collect on that. And who are they going to sell the house to? If everybody's leaving San Francisco looking for jobs, all those people, then it's not a good time to be selling a house. You're going to have to bring that house down. That's a loss for the bank. It doesn't want to do. The bank is not a real estate dealer. They don't want to deal with that. So you have that's what happens.
I did see those shades,
we are
Brian.
an
You look great.
interconnected system. Capitalism has interconnected us over the last 2 or 3 centuries in ways never seen before. So no one knows all of the implications, but the firing of all those people, and remember, a tiny group of executives make a decision in a room we don't even know about, and suddenly 30,000 people are not working for Intel or Apple or IBM or any of the others. They have no say in this decision. I mean, not only is it not democratic, it is the most dictatorial arrangement. Those executives weren't elected by the people they're firing.
It's almost authoritarian, if you think about it.
Banks that they lent to, borrowed from, are affected. All these people are affected, have no say, don't even know until the hammer drops on them.
No democratic input
and then
into
if you
their
raise interest rates,
place of
everybody
employment.
understands the value of a bond goes down. Well, the law allows banks to list as their assets the price they paid for the bond, not what it's worth today. Sometimes banks are required to do something called mark to market. In other words, adjust the value on their portfolio of a bond for what it would actually get if you had to sell it. Then you would suddenly say, oh my God, their investments have gone down. How could they cover the demand back for their deposits? They couldn't. Oh my God, those questions, those go through the minds of those executives. They will be asked, and they'll have no answer. They will be asked, why didn't you let everybody know? But I'll give you the answer, because that's not profitable. We can get through this. We'll do this. We'll do that. We'll hope for that. The government will come in. That's what they do because they want to hold on. They just lost their jobs, these executives. They are gone. Those banks, they will never run that bank again. My guess is they'll never run any bank again, given what they're going to have to say when they submit their resume. So, wow. All these things swept aside in the single-minded, we'll get through it, we'll make a lot of money, we've been making a lot of money, this will pass. That's what happens. That's, by the way, why you have regulation. If I can say one word about that, here is a lesson in regulation. It never works. Capitalists are the people who get into their hands the wealth of society. We know that. We see that. We know who gets the profits. The major shareholders, the top executives. They have every incentive to block reforms that limit their profitability. They block them for years. When finally the reforms are passed, usually after a crisis like this, they fight that. They make them weaker than they would otherwise be, just as Greg Becker of this bank did. And then as soon as they're passed, weakened, they go to work to repeal them, to weaken them further. That's the history
I
of
don't think you would go
every
down this
reform.
road yet.
We had a
That's
reform
my
after the Great
50s
Depression
arc.
called the Glass-Steagall Act to limit what banks could do. In 1999, the Glass-Steagall bill was finally repealed, and the repeal signed by the then President Bill Clinton. It's not just Republicans who do this. On target, a few years later, the great crash of 2008 and 9, after which we had Dodd-Frank, more reforms. And what happened to them? Weakened before they were passed, then opposed after they were passed, then reduced, eliminated. Donald Trump went a big step, reduced it, and here we are with the next crisis. This is so repetitive, it's so boring as a part of the history of capitalism, that the only mystery, really, is that otherwise intelligent people, which most of us are, seem to need to not see it. My wife is a psychotherapist. You know her. She has taught me the important psychological concept of denial. I feel myself to be an economist, and I'm not, by far not the only one, explaining all of this, which we are doing as best we can. It's not difficult. What there is a problem. People don't want to see it. They don't want to start the mental process of seeing the depths of the problem because they're afraid of where it will take them. And their fear is legitimate. The solution to make believe it isn't there, that's self-destructive.
Professor Wolf, you are in big demand today, and we are already past time that you were supposed to give to us. And I am incredibly thankful to you for that. But I also want to respect your time, and I want to thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure, Mitch. And if we can arrange another time soon, and if you want to continue, please know that I admire everything you do, and the Pacifica Network for making all of this kind of material available. So I'm always at your disposal. Just get in touch.
Well, you know I do, so we'll be following up. The best to you, sir.
You too. Thank you.
I'm back to just normal Rob now. You can ignore reality, but can't ignore the consequences of ignoring reality. I mean, again, it's why hypernormalization. You know? I always find hypernormalization it's so useful in understanding, I think, why you look around our society and you see the obvious signs of collapse everywhere. And just you see people just doubling and tripling down on upholding the system and believing in it. We saw even on Monday, remember what all the stuff from from the Biden administration, just keep believing in the system, folks. The more the contradictions become apparent, the more the obvious and direct the commands come from the elite class to continue believing in the system, and people just double down and they just don't want to see it, right? The closer it comes to full collapse, the more people believe in it, it seems like. Yeah, you can just keep tossing the hot potato onto the next generation. And that game is running out now, right? They can't even do that anymore. The whole process of kicking the can to the next generation is happening right now. And all of that next generation, unlike when this was going on with the boomers, this generation is just watching this process play out right in front of them. Just have their whole future just stolen from them directly in front of their eyes. By the same people that are going on TV and being like, no, everything's fine. Everything's totally okay. The Pied Piper is going to have to be paid soon. The chickens are going to come home to roost. It's just an inevitability. You know? And like Malcolm X said, when the chickens came home to roost, that never made me sad. It always made me glad. I think that kind of explains the kind of sick satisfaction that we get from fantasizing about this collapse. You know, it's going to be a disaster. There's no getting around that for probably all of us as well. But there's a certain sort of cosmic justice, or there will be, in seeing the chickens finally come home to roost for some of the way that we've been organizing our society and our economy and our political culture. It's going to be satisfying regardless of how brutal the fallout is. To see chickens come home to roost for the absolute worst people. I don't know if there's anything else to look at here. Let me see if there's anything else on this. We can take back a look at what mainstream media is saying, see if there's anything been new. Anything new that's dropped. Something from CNBC 40 minutes ago.
All right, as Credit Suisse joins
The
Silicon
latest
Valley and
update on
Signature on
this.
the list of troubled banks, the question is whether more will join them. Joining us now to talk about the banking crisis and the ripple effect in the market, senior markets commentator Mike Santoli and CNBC.com banking reporter Hugh Son with us in the studio. Hugh, let me begin with you. At root, fundamentally, what's the matter with Credit Suisse?
Okay, so Tyler, glad you asked.
Yes, it is me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Investors have woken to the fear, to the increased risks they're building up the banking system as a result of moving from the regime where we had zero interest rate policy for about a decade into a more normalized environment. So you have basically the market sniffing out. You've had 3 banks fail here in the U.S. in the last week. Now you have the market essentially sniffing out
Every bank.
Who could be next in the system? So there are some similarities. And if you look
Swiss
at Silicon Valley
government
Bank,
says they'll
we know
provide
that
more
Thursday,
cash if
42
needed.
billion
I know the
in deposits
Saudis are
led the bank in a
the
single
top
day.
investor
That's pretty
in the
dramatic.
bank, and they're
Now,
saying
we've
no,
also
they're not going to
learned
they're
that
not
with,
going to
Credit
invest.
Suisse in the fourth quarter alone, they lost 110 billion Swiss francs in their deposits. So 37% of their entire deposit base evaporated in the fourth quarter. That was in the fourth quarter. Here we are in March. Some of those outflows have continued.
But this has been a notably slow-rolling debacle in the case of Credit Suisse. It's not like SVB, where one day everything seemed okay and the next it didn't. Here, we've been watching Credit Suisse deteriorate.
Credit Suisse has been a known problem player. I would say that the tenure
Listening to
has been laid out.
CNBC announcers, economics talk about the bank collapse feels like listening to true crime episodes narrated by the murderers. Yeah, and I think that's like we always have to keep that in mind when we're watching that coverage. But I still think the coverage can be really valuable to understand like the perspective of the elite class. And in the sort of mainstream media establishment, you got different ideological wings of the elite class. Like the conservative wing, the reactionary wing on Fox Business or whatever, they're all talking about a big bloodbath. They're talking about a coming crash, a coming recession. And then you have from the more liberal wing of the elite class, they're the ones saying like, no, and trying to like temper people's expectations and trying not to make people panic too much. So it can still be really valuable, I think, to just check in with what mainstream media is doing, even if we can understand like that they're coming from a perspective of being very much involved in upholding this exact system and not, like they were saying with 2008, not ever suggesting to people that there's a problem. They benefit from the system continuing to expand and continuing to grow as it does, grow perpetually. These people will never admit that it's a flawed system. No, there's nothing, right? That's what we're saying. Even after all these crashes now, even these getting closer and closer together, these big crises, these big adjustments or whatever they call them, whatever language they develop to talk about it. It's becoming, that's what I mean about the contradictions. Like it's becoming more and more obvious to everyone how totally broken it is and how corrupt it is. And that's been the bizarre thing, I think, watching a lot of this stuff over the last couple of years is just wondering when that tipping point is going to come, when people just lose confidence that this system can continue, you know? And the more, yeah, we were overdue by 5 years for sure. It's just been, it's been a zombie economy, you know? People don't, exactly, and they don't think there's an alternative for sure. Now, is the Ursula Le Guin quote? We live in capitalism. Its power seems inescapable. So did the divine right of kings. Any human power can be resisted and changed by human beings. Resistance and change often begin in art, and very often in our art, the art of words. But its power certainly does seem inescapable. Yeah, the Madame Maple Syrup, that was the quote that I was thinking of. Easier to imagine the end of the world than imagine the end of capitalism. That seems to be like what the pervasive kind of view in our society is about these economic systems, no matter how unstable it is. The propaganda does work, absolutely, yeah. It isn't just a matter of keeping faith in capitalism to make shit actually work. It's a matter of keeping faith in capitalism's ability to hire murderous thugs to force everyone to pretend that anything works. That's true as well. I wonder if there's like footage of like, because we looked a little bit about the footage from the 2008 crash the other day. I'd be interested to see footage that like Richard Wolff was talking about in that previous segment, talking about like all the footage prior to it of all the people saying the exact stuff we're hearing now, going, yeah, it's totally fine. Nothing to worry about, nothing to see here. That's why I don't really trust these kinds of narratives when they start to form. Don't worry, they contained it. They contained it. This is just isolated incident. It seems like all these different isolated incidents are all kind of coming together more and more frequently. At what point does that stop being isolated? That's the question.
now with the crash of these three banks in the U.S., certainly the fear of contagion is spread, and it really is the market essentially saying, who's going to be next. And in Europe, they're the weakest of sort of a bad bunch, right? They've had risk management issues over the years. Their revenue has collapsed. Their costs are relatively sticky, so they're in a negative feedback loop at the moment. And I've talked to sources, and one of the common things they'll say is, when the name of the country is in the name of your bank, you're probably going to get bailed out at some point. Sure. But that has not happened yet. And so there's concern of contagion from a collapse in this.
Even, Mike, as we're showing, for instance, HSBC, which itself just came to the rescue of SVB's UK arm, buying them for £1. So this is not like you can paint everything with a broad brush here.
No, not at all. And honestly, I don't think there's a really satisfying answer to why now, why today, aside from that trigger being sort of pulled by the comments that, the Saudi bank would not add more to its holdings. And I think what it tells you is we're in an environment where you just try to pick out the slowest member of the herd because you have a fear that because rates are going up, because you do have lots of flows in motion in terms of deposits leaving, especially low-yielding accounts, you're getting penalized in a sense for the more sophisticated your customer base is and the more concentrated it is, the more vulnerable you are. That was the case with SVB. It's the case with the fears around First Republic to a degree, and it would theoretically be the case in terms of the wealth management clientele of Credit Suisse, where it's why do we stay when we could just go? That being said, I think we're just trading the shadows here. We're just sort of flinching because maybe there's something there. There's not an aggregate capital deficiency out there. There's not.
This is what I've been saying, too. They're flinching at everything. These are not confident people. These people are not, no matter what they say, we can look by their actions and tell that they're not confident in the system, right? They're just flinching at everything right now. Every little sudden movement. These banking guys are so paranoid. And like we said, there's other sects of this kind of elite class that are actively cheering it on. But it's very clear these people are not as confident as they claim to be about the stability of the system.
Really some kind of trove of toxic assets we've never before been witness to, as there was in 07, 08, 09. What we have right here is government bond prices went down a lot last year. We knew that, right? And that's just sort of sitting on the books out there. So in that sense, maybe there's a slight comfort in the fact that we're not really waiting to unwind something
cleaned
that
up all
is a
that corruption
mystery. We're
from
just sort of
08, though,
figuring
so don't worry about that.
whether these folks can stand the deposit outflow.
Hugh, how do you react to that?
Yeah, so one key thing is the news that sparked the sell-off in Credit Suisse today was Saudi saying, look, no mas, we're in for 10%, we can't go any further. That was known. That's a regulatory hurdle that they have. They could never have gone past 10%. So, understanding that tells you all that you need to know about this, which is it's about fear. It's about lack of confidence in the banking system, in that part of the world, and concerns that investors have with the risk in the banking system.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting way to put it. I mean, we've used the word contagion a good bit here. It seems like there may not be a classic credit contagion here, but there is a contagion of suspicion and fear, right?
Yeah, and that's based on
what kind of a system is this? Suspicion and fear.
Yeah, and as Michael just pointed out, I mean, this is the wealth management deposit base of Credit Suisse. They haven't stuck around. They've voted with their feet, and they've moved.
Interesting point that Michael made. Michael, you said, earlier, a moment ago, it's been the more sophisticated customers who have been moving the fastest. Maybe that is always the case, but it's an interesting point. Go ahead, finish the thought there.
Well,
and then
as a matter of fact, a lot of the analysts have said, look, we like the banks that have a very fragmented, overwhelmingly retail deposit base, and a lot of these sort of southern regionals and things like that. And it's not, it's really just because the money just doesn't move in mass very efficiently, and there's some stickiness to just having your bank account where you get your payroll, direct deposit.
Got it. Mike, Hugh, thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Welcome back to Power Lunch. Bank stocks have been
What else do we have here?
Oh my, we're going to go down to the New York Stock Exchange now. Jim Cramer joins us. We're looking at the markets. I was about to say marginally better, but not much. 586 points off on the Dow, Jim. We're looking at Credit Suisse off close to 30% this morning. So many of these European banks, the CPI data from yesterday, and then this data we got this morning. Put it all together.
Here's the real analysis that we need.
Around 11 o'clock, the selling
talked about seeing only numbers. Jim Cramer.
Will end, but the PPI number was benign. At 4 o'clock, before we knew about the problems with Credit Suisse, the market was looking exactly flat. So as my colleague David Faber would say, if you didn't know that Credit Suisse was in trouble, you basically were on the moon. So, I mean, am I going to sell Advanced Micro and Meta off of Credit Suisse. We have a very different set of problems here. And by the way, we have a lot of research that says own these regional banks. I'm waiting for the government to indemnify all the regional bank deposits because right now we still have a lot of flight. And we came pretty close on Sunday to be over the precipice, Andrew. And I think we're kind of like starting to realize, wow, did we come close?
But what
and
do you
that's
think?
a lot of what
Steve
the
Leishman was on yesterday, and he had that quote. I think it was an unnamed Treasury official that effectively said that deposits in this country are indemnified effectively, or guaranteed across
let's
the board.
think about that.
200, and the question is that true?
Well, yeah, let's think about that. And I said to CEO, I told him last night to CFO conference, congratulated him, an unnamed Treasury official. Okay, well, I mean, if we look back and we say, well, you know why I took all my money and kept it at blah, blah, blah regional bank? Because an unnamed Treasury official said it was okay. Well, I'm sorry, you're a moron. I mean, unnamed like name yourself and say, listen, we're indemnifying, we're going to guarantee. But an unnamed Treasury official, I think that's what I would call a slim read.
So where do you come down on this?
I genuinely don't know how people watch that stuff and take away like, interesting. This has been helpful and beneficial to me to look at this. I don't know, folks. The line doesn't, overall, my general impression, the line doesn't seem to be doing what it's supposed to be doing right now. How about the shit he pulled last month praising SVP? I mean, it's like honestly, like financial punditry is like really no different than like sports punditry, right? Where you just like you forcefully make like a bold claim on something, right? And even if you're wrong, you just don't acknowledge being wrong and you pivot to something else. But if you're right, you look like you really know what you're talking about. Sports punditry, I mean, it's interesting. This is exactly how it works. You just make these bold declarations. You make these bold declarations, and when they work out, you're just like, see, I told you. And when they don't, it just slides right off your back. You just move right on to the next thing. You just move right on to the next thing. Financial punditry is kind of the exact same thing.
The gap.
Oh yeah, I remember this.
The gap between what CNBC advertises itself as and what it is. You know, look, we're both snake oil salesmen to a certain extent, but we do label the show as snake oil here. Isn't there a problem selling snake oil as vitamin tonic?
I think that there are two kinds of people. There are people who come out and they make good calls and bad calls.
The difference is not good call, bad call. The difference is real market and unreal market. Let me show you. This is you ran a hedge fund.
Yes, I did for many years.
You know, a lot of times when I was short at my hedge fund and I was positioned short, meaning I needed
someone
it down,
should give me a couple billion.
I would create a level of activity beforehand that could drive the futures. I would encourage anyone who's in the hedge fund to do it because it's legal, right? And it's a very quick way to make money. No one else in the world would ever admit that, but I don't care.
That's right, and you can say that here.
I can't. I'm not going to say it on TV.
You know, I understand you want to make finance entertaining, but it's not a game.
Don't you want guys like me who have been in it to show the shenanigans? What else can I do?
You knew what the banks were doing, and yet were touting it for months and months. And so now to pretend that this was some sort of crazy, once-in-a-lifetime tsunami that nobody could have seen coming is disingenuous at best and criminal at worst.
I want kangaroo courts for these guys. I really do. I want indictments. We've not seen any indictments. Where's the indictments for AIG?
These guys at these companies were on a Sherman's march through their companies, financed by our 401k, and they burned the house down with our money and walked away rich as hell. So
I gotta say, John Stewart,
the gap,
pretty rich as well. I'm sure John's got some money tied up in all this business himself. Yeah, Jim Cramer was really forceful in calling for all these indictments, obviously. We all remember Jim Cramer arguing that these guys need to get to face the wall. Exactly. Jim Cramer is bigger than he's ever been. I mean, it's like, it's the thing that you notice following this kind of business, whether it's financial stuff, whether it's foreign policy stuff. Like, these people can't fail, right? No matter how many times you're wrong about when political reporting, talking about foreign policy, all the people, Iraq is a big subject of discussion right now. It's the 20-year anniversary of the invasion of Iraq. All those journalists are still around. We're still dealing with fucking Jonathan Chait and these guys. Today, 20 years later, they all have even more powerful positions in the media. It's impossible to fail. You get to this level of access, and it's just you yourself become too big to fail. Fucking Jim Cramer, John Chait. It's all part of the, like, no matter what element or what, like, your main focus is in your reporting that you do, or your commentary that you do, you get to this point of elite status and connections, and it's just regardless of the ways you're catastrophically wrong about everything, fails to impact your audience. It fails to impact your perpetual rise and growth in terms of a platform, in terms of an audience, in terms of a salary. Amazing. No, I know John Shea was defending the dirty mask lady. One of these fucking freaks who's just like, can you explain what woke is? And she's like, and John Shea's like, hey, now, come on. Come on now. It's just so annoying seeing these people just continually fail upwards for decades and decades. It's very frustrating, folks. And me, I just fail the same. I don't fail upwards. I just fail. My line just kind of stays like this. And I just fail and fail and fail, and I don't get rewarded for it. And these people fail all the time, and it seems to be a good thing for them. I don't know. I don't get it. It's frustrating. It's frustrating. I fail sideways. That's right. Thank you. Thank you. That's key. That's one of the big Sigma success win mindset techniques. Stop failing sideways. You got to fail upwards. You definitely don't want to fail down, obviously. Too many of us are failing sideways. We got to start failing upwards. At least Hillary isn't planning a comeback. Take heart in that, at least. But the thing is about that also, Dave, is that Hillary would love a comeback. It's just there's enough people around her that are like, yeah, I think maybe it's not a good idea right now. That if it was up to her, if it was up to her, she would run again on a big Hillary warned us. I warned you that Russia was bad. I warned you that Trump was bad. No one was saying this but me. I've been vindicated. And I lost because of sexist Bernie bros. She would love that. I don't know. I wanted to stick around longer, folks. Honestly, I really wanted to try and stick around and see if I can make the number go up to the sub goal all the way. I've been doing some half-assed pitches towards people to subscribe to the channel today. I wanted to stick around and a little bit longer and try and sell people on.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Thank you, Gauntlet.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you very much, M. Gauntlet, for the 5 gifted subs. I really appreciate that. And thank you, Sean, for the 69 gifted subs from M. Gauntlet. Very nice. Very nice. And thank you, Sean, as well, for the gifted sub. I appreciate that, Sean. I appreciate that a lot. Thank you. I know times are tough for you right now. In fact, you should probably not be. This is not good, streamer best practices. You should probably not be gifting subs in this channel. I'll go so far as to say. So, I know I'm not that's probably not the best idea to discourage people from it, but hey, I don't know. I don't want anyone to go into fucking debt over this. Okay? I don't know. Hillary Romney 24. They both warned us about Russia. Only they were saying it. That's really the amazing thing about Romney and the way he was ridiculed when he talked about Russia in 2012 and the way that libs now all think Russia is just evil incarnate. Our master is discouraging contributions. My ideology is being challenged. I mean, listen, if you can afford it, if you can afford to, please support the content that I do. You know, I got to make the number go up every single day. That's the deal that I have. I'm part of the content gig economy. I'm caught in the content gig economy treadmill. And the way that works is I have to make the little number go up. You know? And if you can afford it, and if you can support the work that I do and support this community, I appreciate it a lot. It's more of a hamster wheel. It's that as well. Yeah. If you can afford it, please support this content. Support the work that I do here on Twitch. Help me build my productive forces. Help me make my line go up. Help me change the numbers in the computer. If you have to choose between that and like eating, though, it's okay. You know? It's okay. Thank you very much, MGon, that I appreciate it. A visual learner. Oh, I may have something. Where is that actually? If you're not familiar with the community, if you need a bit of an incentive, if you want to know how this shit works, here you go.
Thank you for expressing interest in the Friendship Triangle community. We would be thrilled to have you on board as a member of our exclusive platform. As you may know, the Friendship Triangle is Twitch's only two-dimensional, triangle-shaped, friendship access and trickle-down clout, tiered reward system. Today you have an amazing opportunity to join the base level of the Friendship Triangle system. Once you are part of the community, you'll have the ability to rise through the ranks and achieve higher levels of access and rewards. One way to do this is by...
My neighbors probably hear that and they're just like, who is this person? They probably hear this in the hallway.
Gifting subscriptions to your fellow members or by inviting your friends and family members to join our community. As you ascend the tiers, you will be exposed to a range of new and exciting benefits, such as exclusive content, advanced features, and access to our elite community members. We are confident that you will enjoy all the perks that come with being part of the Friendship Triangle. However, we also want to remind you that not all friends and family members are to be trusted, especially those who may not support your new lifestyle. That's why we encourage you to focus on building meaningful relationships within our community, where you will find like-minded individuals who share your interests.
If you're one of my neighbors, you have to say so, okay? If you're one of my neighbors and you've been converted through hearing me talk through the walls, you have to say so.
And values. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. We are always here to support our members and ensure that your experience with the Friendship Triangle is enjoyable. We're glad that you are considering joining the Friendship Triangle community. We look forward to seeing you rise through the Chaos Zone and all the way into the elite tier. It's not a cult.
There we go. I'm going to try one more last-ditch effort here, okay? One more last-ditch effort. Oh, yeah. I'm glad you enjoy that. One more last-ditch effort here to see if I can get across the finish line today. Okay? And if you don't want to see an adult man staring at the screen silently, making everyone uncomfortable, please look away. And here we go. I'm going to make one final plea. Let me just change the...
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Because you see, for some, like, even though in the past I've like incited people to subscribe by like doing weird dancing and doing these moments, I've been trying to avoid it. Humiliating myself for your amusement, you know? Nays Zero, thank you very much for the 3 gifted subs. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
And thank you, Moist Owlets, as well for the gifted sub. Some people do need the razzle dazzle. Sometimes I have to do it. So here we go. And one generous chatter could not only get us to the sub goal today, but trigger the ultra rare, ultra exclusive 10 sub alert. If you want to. I'm just saying one generous chatter could do that. Okay, here we go. You ready for this? Shit. I can wait just as long as you can. Thank you, Sikalufakis. Thank you. For the gifted sub, I really appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, that's gonna have to do. That's gonna have to do. I imagine those are probably the moments when my mom decides to tune in. What's my like approaching middle-aged son up to? Turns that on, like, ooh, okay. That good, huh? It's like that meme. It's like you're looking at something and you see the text from your dad coming in. How's the job search going? And you just see that.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through
Are you
all
winning,
this.
son? Who is that? Thank you, GMO, for the gifted sub. Thank you to GMO and Sikalufakis for bailing me out there. I appreciate you. I appreciate you all very much. Everyone that supports this channel. Everyone that tunes in. Everyone that's part of this community. I really do appreciate you so much. An elitist bailout, that's right.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
The money from this sub is for oats and oat-related products only.
Thank you, Quaker Oats Sky. I will make sure to take the profits from the 17-month resub at tier 1 and spend it on some kind of oat-related product. This is my pledge to you. This is my pledge to you. Thank you, Quaker Oats Sky. Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it. It's okay. It's okay. I have to berate all of you and try and squeeze you for subs, so I know some of the japing and the ribbing is all being done in good fun. I do. I think we're both aware of this dynamic. The way this dynamic works. And how when you make fun of me for things that you're all joking. You're all joking. When you say those cruel and hurtful things, I know it's a joke. I know it's not true. I know it's not serious. It's a joke. And I, in turn, am just joking when I, say mean stuff about you, which is rare, frankly. As Netflix only needs to get celebs once a month, so we got to do it every day. I don't know, man. It's like, I would much rather have some, like, billionaire just financing this whole thing. You know? I'm so jealous of those, like, right-wing guys working at The Blaze and the Daily Wire and all this shit. It seems like just the best deal. Just get some oil billionaire. You don't have to worry about getting people to subscribe, profits, any of that stuff. No one is willing to pay me to act as like the PR wing of like socialism, though. Unfortunately, not yet. Not yet. If I can get some kind of foreign funding, eventually secure some funds from China or whoever, I'll be the first to let you folks know. And then believe me, I'll be glad to not have to do this anymore. Netflix has decided not to renew Rob for a second season. Pretty understandable. Understandable on their perspective. Ugh. I mean, we are very close to the goal. I mean, aren't we? It's gotten to the point where it's like pretty close. It would be like next to nothing really for some hero some absolute hero could step in and make the number go up to the good number. I'm just saying that it's theoretically possible. It's theoretically possible for that to happen. You know, am I allowed to talk about things that are possible? You know, I'm not forcing anyone to do anything. I'm simply pointing out that that possibility exists and that it's there. Why doesn't China open up streamer hype houses instead of police stations in Canada? That would be a great investment. That would be a fantastic investment. I was so proud of this. I'm changing hearts and minds, folks. I posted this TikTok. Don't you feel this like sense of like excitement by it? Talking about? You do, don't you? And it's probably a good sign, right? The fact that like, cause for sure, if there is another massive economic collapse, average people will be absolutely affected by it. I'm sure it will be a massive calamity. But like, even knowing that like average people or even you yourself is going to be affected by it, don't you have this kind of sick sense of like, yes, when it starts to happen? That's probably a good sign, right? I was so happy. Logically, we're all doing well. I got this comment here from Kev100. And I don't know where Kev100 is located. Kev, if you're watching, I was so happy to get this comment. He says, I thought I was the only one. I secretly hope that the dollar falls and China takes over my country. I like to imagine that Kev is just some like politically isolated, you know, somebody who's, you know, just surrounded with all the terrible propaganda all the time. And they're like Winston Smith in 1984 being like, am I the only one that's like this? And then they see me. They see this fucking guy. This guy. Being like, I feel comfortable opening up. I have this secret wish that everything would just collapse and China would just come in and take over my country. We're all Kev100. Here's the thought, just do a walk-in at the Chinese embassy and offer your services. I mean, nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? I mean, it couldn't hurt. What's the worst that's going to happen if I did do that? If I just walked into the embassy and said, like, here's what I can offer you. I'm already doing this is a great opportunity. I'm already doing a bunch of work for you, completely pro bono. I've done 2.5 years of propaganda for you, completely pro bono. And I simply ask for a minor stipend. A minor stipend. For doing the work that I'm already doing for you right now. I feel like if I was working in that world, I'd be like, that sounds like a pretty good deal. You know? Oh, for sure, Johnny. I'm going to be ratting on all the people. Absolutely. Absolutely. I've talked about my lists. I was very happy to have that comment from Kev100. You're not alone, Kev. You're not alone, Kev100. There are many of us. We're gathering in numbers. We're gathering in strength. We're developing more ideological coherence. We're not backing down no matter how hard it gets. Okay. Now, what do we got here? See that adhesive residue square in the back windshield? That used to be a Blue Lives Matter sticker. Don't let them hide, okay? Don't let them pretend that they weren't involved with that fascist movement. Yeah, I got that Cuban diplomat as well. I got some ins. I got some connections. Last chance, folks. Last chance to subscribe to TRRS until tomorrow. It is your last chance until the boulder rolls all the way down to the bottom of the hill, and tomorrow I keep trying to push it back up again. That neighbor used to celebrate the 4th of July a little too hard. He's got a USA flag Speedo somewhere in there. Give my regards to our friend Hilda Beast, folks. She always has great raid reactions. One of the funnier people to raid on this platform. Always has very funny reactions. I will be back tomorrow. Thank you for watching the stream today. I love you all. Goodbye for now. See you on the next boulder climb. There we go. Take care, folks. The piece is over here. Okay. Goodbye.